Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarai Sierra. Sarai Sierra was born on November 9, 1979, in New York City to Puerto Rican parents who immigrated to the United States in 1973. Her father, Dennis, and mother, Bethany Jimenez, settled in Manhattan, where they raised their children, including Sarai, her brother, David, and her sister, Christina. Soon after moving, the couple joined the local Protestant community. They raised all of their children strictly, following the religious teachings of their chosen faith. Sarai's family regularly attended church together, socialized with other members of the religious community, and the children attended Sunday school. Growing up, Sarai had a strong, energetic, and creative personality. Unlike her younger sister Christina, who was quiet, obedient, and very modest. Sarai's family had strict rules that all members had to follow. These rules, which were applied to the daily routines of the family members, such as the daughters were not allowed to socialize with boys, and they had to be home by 9 p.m. All their friendships were controlled, and the parents always knew where they were and with whom. Sarai's life revolved around her family, school, and church, and her sphere of contact was limited to those places. For a young, active, sociable girl like Sarai, she felt trapped by the boundaries set by her parents, even though they thought they were doing the best for her. During her school years, Sarai planned to go to a teacher training college and become a teacher in the field of culture or art. However, as she neared graduation, her interests changed and she became fascinated with psychology, considering a career change to a field related to this new passion. At a religious community meeting, a young man named Steven noticed Sarai, a striking dark-haired beauty. He found an excuse to talk to her. At the time, Sarai was 18 years old, while Steven was 7 years older than her. Despite the age difference, her parents found Steven to be a decent, polite, and honest young man, so her parents agreed to let the couple date. Steven quickly got along with Sarai's parents, Dennis and Bethany. Less than a year after meeting, in February 1999, the couple married. Sarai was 19 and Steven was 26. It is possible that Sarai did not truly love him, but agreed to marry him for the purpose of moving out of her parents' home and freeing herself from such strict control. After the move, Steven and Sarai settled in Michigan, where Steven's parents lived. The change was especially important for Sarai, who had spent most of her life in New York. The new environment seemed to have a positive effect on her. She enjoyed decorating her new home, making new friends, and exploring the area. Sarai found work as a receptionist at a local dental office and was thinking about getting a college degree. Sarai soon became pregnant, giving birth to a boy and then a girl. As a result, her college plans were postponed. A few years later, the Sarai family of 4 decided to move again, this time to California, where they settled in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles. Here, Steven was offered a job, but the couple soon realized that the money he earned was not enough to live on. After consulting with each other, they decided to move back to New York. They found a small apartment to rent. At this time, the couple was having financial difficulties. Sarai remained at home to take care of the children, while her husband did many odd jobs to make a living. However, things began to stabilize when the children started going to school. Sarai got a job at an advertising agency. At the same time, Steven found a stable job as a bus driver on one of the city's routes. Sarai put her studies on hold to raise her children. As her children grew older and her life became more stable at the age of 30, she returned to her long-cherished dream of pursuing an education. She decided to pursue a different field, choosing a degree in psychology at a local university. However, the boring classes began to bore Sarai. She decided to find herself in a different field, choosing a career that would inspire her and allow her to express herself. Since Sarai had always been creative, Good at drawing and seeing beauty in everything, her artistic eye eventually led her to photography. To further hone her skills, she joined a prestigious photography community in New York. Her talent was quickly recognized as she demonstrated her ability to choose the perfect angle and create beautiful compositions. Her work was even praised by professionals for its creativity and vision. In early 2012, Sarai's colleagues advised her to create a social media page to showcase her work. She followed their advice and started posting her photos online. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of users subscribing to her profile and enthusiastically commenting on each new post. Within a few months, she became a real star, and her subscriber count continued to grow exponentially. The enthusiasm really overwhelmed Sarai. She felt that she could achieve much more and wanted to develop and improve in this direction. So she proposed to organize a group photography trip to look for beautiful and unusual locations in different parts of the world. She started by organizing short trips within the country, focusing on capturing iconic architectural landmarks and historical monuments through her lens. When her photos received significant attention and praise, she was motivated to continue. Next, Sarai wanted to travel to Istanbul, one of the most ancient and beautiful cities in the world, to document the city's historical sites. Sarai's decision to take a photography trip to the other side of the world surprised her family, especially her parents. Since she had never traveled abroad or been away from home for a long time, they were not very happy with the idea. However, Sarai was determined to carry out her plan and even arranged for her best friend, Magdalena, to come along. Her parents did not know that Sarai's family was going through a difficult time, as her relationship with her husband began to fall apart. It is possible that this difficult situation prompted Sarai's desire to take the trip. She wanted to change her surroundings and think about her family's difficulties. Sarai had lived in a strict framework for too long, and now she was eager to do what she wanted to do. At the same time, her husband Steven's social media profile began posting cryptic statuses, reflecting on the value of marriage, love, and mutual respect in relationships. And there was a post where Steven darkly hinted at Sarai's infidelity. But a few hours later, Steven deleted the post, leaving unanswered questions behind. It was clear that he felt unhappy and unloved, and he tried to show it to everyone through his social media page. Sarai was also going through the same pain, but she kept it to herself, trying not to complain and focusing on her work. Sarai's long-awaited trip was coming up. But she received some disappointing news just before her departure. Her best friend Magdalena, who was supposed to accompany her, had to cancel the trip due to unforeseen work issues. Although Sarai was extremely upset, she had been looking forward to the trip for so long that she decided not to change her plans. Her family was worried about her traveling alone to a foreign country, but Sarai reassured them that everything would be fine. She promised to keep them updated by calling, writing, and sending photos every day. In addition, Sarai was also planning to visit Germany and Austria, where she had scheduled several commercial photography assignments. Her entire trip was literally scheduled by the hour, and she would not deviate from the plan. On January 7, 2013, Sarai traveled from New York to Istanbul. She had some cash with her, and she had carefully packed her belongings, which included a smartphone, a tablet, and a cheap DSLR camera with a professional lens. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she reported to her family that she had landed safely and was on her way to her pre-booked hotel, which was located in a less popular part of the city. Due to budget constraints, the hotel was located in a remote neighborhood that locals considered unsafe. After dropping off her luggage and changing into her travel clothes, she headed to the nearest metro station, eager to explore the historic city center. Sarai spent her days in Istanbul sightseeing and capturing the beauty of the city through photography. Every evening, she would video call her parents and husband, sharing stories about her experiences and plans for the next day. She also spent time processing the photos and sharing them on social media. Unknown to her family, Sarai met a young man named Antolin on social media in 2012. Over the course of several months, they corresponded and became very close. It was Antolin who convinced her to fly to Istanbul. As a native of Istanbul, Antolin was the ideal guide, showing Sarai around interesting places. Sarai trusted Antolin completely, and they spent many days together exploring the city. After a week in Istanbul, Sarai traveled to several European countries, where she arranged several commercial photo shoots. Here, Sarai saved money on hotel rooms, as she was welcomed by fans who had subscribed to her social media accounts and had been following her work for a long time. Offered to let her stay. And her fan was a young man in Austria, who met her at the airport in Vienna. He was a few years older than Sarai and shared her passion for photography, admired her work and wanted to meet her in person. Sarai's trip went smoothly. She visited all the planned destinations and met everyone she had arranged to meet. On the third day, she arrived in Berlin, where she was greeted at the airport by fans who took her on a tour of the city. After completing her assignment in Germany, Sarai returned to the airport and flew back to Istanbul, planning to stay there for 2 more days before returning home. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she met Antolin and they spent the day exploring the city together. They ended the evening at a popular local bar, and after midnight, Antolin took Sarai back to her hotel, where they said their goodbyes. On January 21, 2013, Sarai was scheduled to return home to New York after her photography trip. Before leaving, she informed her parents and husband of her flight details. Since this was the longest trip she had ever taken away from home, everyone was relieved that the trip was coming to an end. However, before returning, Sarai decided to take a last walk around the city and take some more beautiful photos to show everyone. At the appointed time, Sarai Dennis, father, arrived at the airport to pick up his daughter because her husband was at work and could not come. He arrived early to avoid any possible traffic jams. However, after the plane landed and all the passengers had disembarked, Sarai disappeared without a trace. Worse still, her phone was unreachable and all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Dennis then waited a while longer, and worried about his daughter's absence, he went to see a representative of the airline. They told him that a passenger by that name was not on the flight, which shocked Dennis. He quickly called Steven and told him what was happening, emphasizing that she needed to be found immediately. Steven started contacting the hotel in Istanbul where his wife, Sarai, was staying. The hotel staff informed him that although it was time to check out, her belongings were still in the room and she had not arrived to check out, and she did not appear at the hotel on the second day. This information sent family members into a panic, as they did not know where Sarai was and did not understand what to do next. Steven accessed his wife's account, looking for clues about her disappearance. He discovered her correspondence with a man named Antolin, which aroused his suspicions. Despite this, Steven decided to contact Antolin directly to find out more. However, Antolin claimed that he had seen Sarai the day before she left and that she had not even called him before the flight. Despite her promise, Sarai's family quickly notified the U.S. Embassy in Istanbul about her disappearance. The next day, a large-scale search operation was launched in the area. Sarai's husband and parents immediately flew to Istanbul to join the search effort. The police launched an investigation, starting with trying to identify the people Sarai had met before she disappeared. To gather information, they interviewed the staff at the hotel where she was staying, as well as her friend Antolin. According to the hotel manager, he last saw Sarai the evening before she disappeared, when she left the hotel with a small bag and a camera. Although she was scheduled to check out the next day, she never returned to the hotel. In addition, the receptionist provided a description of the clothes Sarai was wearing on the day she disappeared. The situation with Antolin is much more interesting and ambiguous. First, the guy's name is actually Taryn, and it is still unclear why he introduced himself to Sarai with a fake name. And it is worth considering that they had been in regular contact for several months before meeting, and Sarai had come to Istanbul at his invitation. All of this suggests that there was a romantic relationship, but Taryn himself categorically denied it, claiming that they were just friends. The next stage of the investigation involved reconstructing Sarai's route in detail. To achieve this, the police examined her mobile phone data and reviewed the footage of street surveillance cameras. They discovered that Sarai took the metro to Sultanahmet district and then to the Cape between the Bosphorus Strait and the Golden Horn Bay, followed by a trip to Eminona Bazaar. However, she got lost in the crowd of tourists at the bazaar. The police continued to track her route and discovered that she had boarded the metro again, intending to visit the Sarai walls. Unfortunately, she disappeared from the camera's view again. Police decided to investigate the area around the Sarai wall, questioning locals and searching the area in the hope of finding any witnesses who might have seen a woman holding a camera. After an extensive search, they found the body of a young woman near the ancient Constantinople wall. The body was hidden under a dirty, old blanket, making it less noticeable. Police believe the blanket was used to transport Sierra to the location. There was no clothing on the lower part of the body. An autopsy found that Sarai died from severe head trauma caused by a heavy, blunt object. Her body also showed signs of trauma, including hematoma and 2 broken ribs. There were also several hematomas on her body and several broken ribs. Pathologists also found epithelial granules and blood under Sarai's fingernails, indicating that she had defended herself and scratched at the attacker. An examination found that the attacker had taken her handbag, phone, and camera, but they left behind valuables such as her gold earrings, wedding ring, and expensive watch. A review of local camera footage showed a young woman resembling Sarai filming with her phone. A man then approached her, punched and pushed her, and both disappeared from view of the camera. Unfortunately, the identity of the attacker was not immediately known, leading to mixed reviews. The incident quickly gained international attention after details of the case were leaked to the media. There have been many questions and mixed reviews about Sarai's international travels. And police suspect that Sarai flew to Istanbul to visit an acquaintance, Antolin, whose real name is Taryn, and then planned to meet another man in Austria. However, both men have denied having an intimate relationship with Sarai. The high-profile case was investigated jointly by Turkey's Special Services and the FBI, but initially, neither agency had any concrete leads to follow. A few weeks after the crime, police tracked down the suspect, Ziya Tali, who had a criminal record and made a living by picking up scraps of paper on the city streets. However, before they could question him, Ziya borrowed money from relatives and fled the country, likely crossing into Syria through Hatti province. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and collected a DNA sample. They compared the DNA to skin particles and semen found on Sarai's body, confirming their suspicions that Ziya was indeed the perpetrator. Sarai's phone was last active in the neighborhood where he lived. Police initially gave up on arresting Ziya after learning that he had fled to Syria. However, an unexpected development changed everything. The suspect attempted to cross the border into Istanbul again, this time to return home, but was arrested for illegal entry. Before his arrest, he had joined a rebel group in Syria, acquired a gun, and was injured in the conflict. Fearing for his safety, he decided to return to Istanbul with the gun, leading to his arrest. Border police quickly alerted security services upon discovering his true identity. During questioning, Ziya Tali gave a statement. On a hiking trail to the Sarai wall, he noticed a young woman and watched her from a distance, admiring her as she took pictures. As he approached her, the woman, who appeared to be trying to communicate with him through gestures, seemed to try to ask him something, but Ziya did not understand because of the language barrier. However, he noticed that she had a brand new iPhone and an expensive camera, which caught his attention. As she continued walking, he followed her. It was getting dark and there was no one else around, near the location next to the wall. At one point, Ziya thought that Sarai was taking pictures of him, which angered him. He picked up a large rock and hit Sarai on the head. The two rolled down the rubble of the wall. After Sarai was knocked unconscious, Ziya took advantage of the situation and sexually assaulted her. Ziya then delivered another serious blow to the head to finish Sarai off. Ziya took Sarai's belongings, including her bag, camera, and phone, and left the scene. As he was leaving, he came across a discarded blanket and decided to return to cover her body. He then dragged the body to a location out of sight of the hiking trail. He then covered the body with a blanket and left. Notably, while the search for Sarai was ongoing, Ziya returned to the crime scene again to confirm that the victim, Sarai, was dead and that her body was still in the same position he had left it. When Ziya found out on the news that the victim's body had been found, he knew the police would soon be looking for him, so he decided to flee the country. He borrowed money from his sister, who often felt sorry for him. The stolen items turned out to be worthless to Ziya. The camera was broken during the fall and the smartphone was locked with a password that he could not crack. Therefore, he threw away the smartphone along with the other stolen items when he fled. Ziya did not deny his guilt, and judging by his testimony, he had no remorse for what he had done, nor was he troubled by his conscience. Important evidence presented in court included forensic DNA analysis. This analysis showed that the skin found under Sarai's fingernails belonged to Ziya and that his DNA was also found on her body. Additional evidence included data from Sarai's cell phone, which showed that it was last used near Ziya's home. Additionally, a surveillance video recording of the attack added to the case file and supported the evidence against Ziya. The presentation of all the evidence led to the decision that Ziya should undergo a psychiatric evaluation. This decision was based on concerns about his sanity due to his unstable behavior and calm description of the violent crimes he had committed. The experts ultimately concluded that Ziya was sane and fully aware of his actions at the time of the attack. In 2014, Judge Ely made the final decision in the case. Ziya Tali was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. This decision was accepted by Sarai's family, who felt it was appropriate. After a thorough autopsy, Sarai's body was returned to New York for burial. Her funeral was held according to the family's wishes and in accordance with their religious beliefs. In her memory, Sarai's family created a website featuring her previously unpublished work, including photographs. The photographs attracted international attention, with people from all over the world wanting to buy them. The money raised from the sale of the photographs was set aside by the family for a charitable cause. Her husband, Steven, began a close relationship with a woman in the Christian community who supported him during this difficult time and regularly helped him with childcare and household chores. Less than 2 weeks before the anniversary of his wife's death, Steven married his new partner. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Ingrid Lyne. Ingrid Lyne was born on August 2, 1975. She lived in Renton, Washington, just outside Seattle, with her 3 young daughters. Ingrid was a nurse at Swedish Medical Center in Seattle. She balanced her career with taking care of her young children. After divorcing Philip Lyne, who was also the father of her children, they agreed to share parenting responsibilities. Although divorced, Ingrid and Philip still maintained a friendly relationship to effectively raise their daughter together. Ingrid's world revolved around her daughters, Noelle, 10, Brooke, 8, and Reese, 6. She was devoted to their safety and happiness, willing to sacrifice whatever was necessary. On April 9, 2016, Philip Lyne visited Ingrid at their residence in Renton, Washington, in a visit intended to care for their children together. Philip was sure that Ingrid would be home to welcome him. But when he arrived at the house, Philip was unable to reach Ingrid by phone, so he then contacted Ingrid's mother, Jorga, for support. Jorga and Philip entered Ingrid's house using Jorga's key and began searching for Ingrid. They found Ingrid's wallet, phone, and other personal items, including her driver's license, but no sign of Ingrid. It seemed unusual for her to leave without telling anyone. Worried, Jorga decided to report Ingrid missing to the authorities. As the investigation progressed, police spoke to Ingrid's friends and neighbors, eventually learning that she had mentioned going on a date with a man the night before. A neighbor also mentioned that Ingrid had recently started seeing a man named John, which was news to Jorga and Philip. Ingrid and Jorga had previously shared phone accounts, allowing Jorga to access Ingrid's call logs. When reviewing the logs, Jorga discovered that Ingrid had made multiple calls to a number registered in Montana. Jorga became suspicious and looked up the phone number online and discovered it was linked to John Robert Charlton's Facebook account. Concerned for Ingrid's safety, Jorga sent a text message to the number on Saturday, saying she had contacted 911 to report her daughter missing. John Charlton replied, looking surprised and asking what was going on. He explained that he and Ingrid had attended a Mariners game the previous day but then broke up because Ingrid needed to take care of her children early the next morning. Even though Jorga was repeatedly asking him to talk to the police, John Charlton refused to stop responding. The case reached a new turning point on April 9th, when a Seattle resident named Mike Novasio placed an emergency call to authorities. Mike reported that when he returned home, he noticed one of his recycling bins had an unusual weight, which had been left outside for collection on April 7th. Mike had noticed something was wrong and had decided to investigate. When he had opened the trash can, he had been shocked to find 3 clear plastic bags, one of which had appeared to contain human remains, which was why he had immediately called the authorities. When the police and medical examiner had arrived, they had carefully examined the contents of the bags. Inside, they had found a human head, a foot, an arm, and a leg. Although the remains had shown no signs of decomposition, facial features had still been recognizable, allowing them to identify the remains as those of Ingrid. In the following days, more of Ingrid's remains had been found. Some had been discovered at a recycling facility, while others had been found in coolers at another location. Unfortunately, not all of Ingrid's remains had been found. During a search of Ingrid's home, police had found tickets to a Mariners game on her laptop dated April 8th. It had been believed that Ingrid and John had attended the game scheduled for 7:10 p.m. on April 11th. As a result, John had been arrested and taken for questioning. During interrogation, John had admitted knowing Ingrid and said they had been dating for about a month after meeting online. He had usually spent the night at her place. But on this particular night, he hadn't because her children would be home the next day. John had claimed that he had gone to a bar with Ingrid after the Mariners game and then driven back to her home in Renton in her car. He had said he had been very drunk and didn't remember much of what had happened after that. He had remembered having sex with Ingrid and her acting strangely, but his memory of the rest of that night had been unclear. When asked what he had done afterward, John had said he wasn't sure, but he had thought he might have slept on a sidewalk in downtown Seattle and woken up there the next morning. He guessed that Ingrid had dropped him off downtown before leaving. John had told authorities he was struggling with alcoholism and had no fixed residence. A physical examination had been conducted and John's injuries had been documented with photographs. He had had scratches on his left hand and forehead, cuts on his mouth and chin, and scratches on his chest. His ex-girlfriend had said she had seen him on April 9th and had noticed his lip was swollen and injured. John had explained his injuries by saying he had been robbed, but this had aroused suspicion among investigators due to John still having his wallet. Ingrid's car had been found by law enforcement in Belltown, a neighborhood near Seattle, on April 20th. However, this discovery raised a contradiction with John's original statement. John had claimed that Ingrid had dropped him off in downtown Seattle and then had driven back home, but evidence from the car had shown otherwise. Police had discovered trash bags in the car that were identical to the bags containing Ingrid's body parts. 3 fingerprints on the driver's door handle had matched John's, leading to his arrest on suspicion of having killed Ingrid and having stolen her car. John's arrest had been based largely on circumstantial evidence. Despite this, he had pleaded not guilty, and his defense team had argued that there had been no direct physical evidence linking him to Ingrid's murder. Initially denying involvement, John had eventually changed his plea to guilty before the trial had begun. During court proceedings, the prosecution had alleged that John had strangled Ingrid at her home and then had used a pruning saw to dismember her body in the bathtub. John had allegedly dumped Ingrid's body in multiple locations in Seattle. At her residence, police had found a nearly empty package of plastic bags identical to those containing her body. In the bathroom, authorities had discovered a 15-inch pruning saw, suspected to have been the tool used to dismember her body. They had also found human remains underneath the bathtub during their investigation. John had been sentenced to just over 27 years in prison, the maximum sentence allowed under state sentencing discretion. However, Judge Julie Spector had wanted to impose a life sentence because John's actions had been too serious. When given the opportunity to speak, John had apologized to the court and Ingrid's family, and had said that he truly regretted his evil and cruel behavior. John had had a long history of run-ins with the law, including convictions for serious crimes such as aggravated robbery, felony theft, and assault. He had also been arrested for theft. However, it had been his behavior at home that had worried his parents the most. In 2006, John's parents had felt threatened by their son's actions and had obtained a temporary protective order against him. According to court records, John had been struggling with the pressures of life and had been experiencing psychological instability. On March 2, 2006, he had been drunk and aggressive, trying to fight with his parents at his home. His behavior, not only in words but also in actions, had posed a threat to their safety. John's parents had been concerned about his possible cocaine use and his tendency to hold grudges for years. They had also noticed that when he had been drunk or on drugs, he had become scary, making them fear for their safety. One incident that stands out is when John had forced his mother to watch the movie Hannibal and had warned her to watch this and be careful. This behavior had been disturbing and had added to their concerns. Despite initial concerns, John's parents had eventually asked that the protective order be withdrawn. Following Ingrid's murder, the grief experienced by her family and friends had been immense, reflecting the loss of a caring mother, daughter, and friend. In the wake of Ingrid's tragic death, the community had come together to support her family, demonstrating strength through adversity. Ingrid's memory would continue to live on in the hearts of those who had known and loved her. Her story served as a reminder to prioritize safety and caution when meeting people online. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra LaMar. In March 2012, the LaMar family, consisting of Steve, a computer expert, his wife Marlene, and their 2 daughters, Danielle and Sierra, living in Fremont, California. Sierra was younger sister. She was born on October 19, 1996. Both girls had a relatively comfortable upbringing, with the usual ups and downs that come with family life. However, a disturbing fact about their father's past had a profound impact on the family. When Danielle and Sierra were younger, their father, Steve, was involved in a serious incident involving inappropriate behavior with one of their roommates during a sleepover. As a result, Steve was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Despite Steve's past convictions, both Sierra and Danielle reported having a good relationship with him, describing him as a kind and respected father. However, when Marlene learned about the incident, they decided to end their relationship, which was already struggling. Marlene soon moved on and started a new relationship. Despite this, both Sierra and Danielle attended Washington High School in their community, where they enjoyed socializing and performed reasonably well academically. Sierra was a cheerful and lively girl who was well-liked at school. She enjoyed participating in dance competitions and cheerleading. In October 2011, her mother, Marlene, decided to move from Fremont to Morgan Hill, a town located 40 miles southwest. Sierra, her mother, and her mother's boyfriend, Rick Gardner, settled into a rented ranch-style home on a rural cul-de-sac. However, Sierra was initially unhappy about leaving behind her close friends and hobbies in Fremont. She struggled to adjust to her new school, Sobrato High, where she didn't receive the same warm welcome she had at Washington High. Despite this, Sierra eventually settled in and made new friends, earning the respect and even joining the cheerleading squad again. By March 2012, Sierra had adapted well to her new environment. On March 11th, she had a conversation with her father and her sister, who still lived in Fremont, and updated them on her progress. The conversation was mostly positive, with Sierra expressing excitement about an upcoming school project, wanting to get her hair colored, and discussing her homework with her sister. Her academic performance seemed to be going well. Sierra ended her Thursday evening chat with Danielle and Steve after dinner, as she had school the next day and it was getting late. They agreed to part ways and promised to catch up soon, unaware that this would be their last conversation. The next morning, February 16, 2012, Sierra got ready for school, locking the house behind her. At 6:29 a.m., she tweeted a friend, then put on her shoes and left to catch the bus. The bus stop was located on a desolate road between Palm and Dewey Avenues, far from Sierra's school, Sobrato High. Many students, including Sierra, had to cross this road daily to catch the bus. At 7:11 a.m., Sierra texted a friend to meet up before class. However, when the bus arrived at 7:11 and 15 seconds a.m., Sierra was missing. Sierra didn't show up to school, which her friends found unusual. However, they didn't think it was serious enough to report to the school authorities. The day went on as usual. When the school day ended, Marlene, Sierra's mom, tried to contact Sierra, but her call went straight to voicemail. Although Marlene thought this was strange, she didn't get worried. However, when she got home and saw that Sierra's room was still empty, she realized that something was amiss. She contacted Steve to ask if Sierra was planning to visit him in Fremont again. Unfortunately, the answer was no. When Marlene called Danielle and a few other friends, they all left with the same message that Sierra could not be found. Marlene began to panic when she called Sierra's high school and discovered that she had missed all her classes. After her calling the authorities, officers were immediately sent to the pedo-Hispanic court. They began by speaking with those closest to Sierra, including several of her friends, who were all candid about the difficulties Sierra and her family were facing. Although Sierra was generally content, it had only been a few months since her mother's divorce forced her to leave her family and old friends behind. Authorities initially thought that Sierra might have left voluntarily, as she had previously mentioned returning to Fremont in a light-hearted and sometimes serious manner. However, there were several things that contradicted this theory. Sierra had stopped posting on social media, her phone was turned off, and all calls went straight to voicemail. She also never arrived at the front door of her home. Her loved ones launched a massive search despite police downplaying her disappearance. The investigation into Sierra's disappearance led to a complex trail of evidence. 2 days after she vanished, data forensics began examining her phone's previous activity. They discovered that her phone had briefly turned on in the middle of the night, before turning off again. The phone's coordinates pointed to a field near Sierra's house, which became a crucial lead in the investigation. A search crew thoroughly searched the fields where Sierra's phone had last been detected. Within minutes, they found the Samsung Galaxy phone she had been using. It was near the road, damaged, and had likely been thrown from a vehicle. Investigators concluded that Sierra hadn't turned on her phone that evening. Instead, they believed that rain had caused a false signal, briefly activating her phone. This coincidence was crucial, as the entire investigation hinged on the discovery of her phone. The case took a disturbing turn when detectives realized that Sierra's phone was probably thrown from a moving vehicle. There were no footprints, tire tracks, or other visible evidence. The next day, a search crew made another discovery. Sierra's backpack was found 2 kilometers from her house, discarded outside a barn. The bag contained her schoolwork, inhaler, and money, suggesting that she had been on her way to school and was forcibly separated from her essential items. Additionally, a complete outfit, believed to be the one Sierra was wearing the morning she vanished, was found in her luggage. This outfit included her pullover, pants, socks, shoes, and even undergarments. The outfit was subjected to DNA testing, which yielded results. Specifically, her pants contained male foreign DNA, suggesting that she had likely been assaulted. The discovery of Sierra's phone and clothing led to a surge of local and international sympathy. The search effort, which had already intensified significantly in the days following her disappearance, received a fresh wave of support. Authorities received over 1,000 new tips, and officers worked more than 7,000 hours. Multiple search teams, comprising over 800 individuals, were deployed to thoroughly search the area. They systematically examined every available lake and reservoir, combed over fields, and searched abandoned buildings. Sierra's disappearance was a major topic of discussion in the community, with missing person posters put up everywhere. Her parents offered a $10,000 reward for any credible information leading to her safe return. Despite the efforts of the community and investigators, only a golf ball and a flipper were found. However, unbeknownst to the public, investigators were making progress in identifying a potential suspect. 12 days after Sierra's disappearance, on March 28, DNA analysis revealed that the DNA on her pants belonged to a local man. As part of the investigation, DNA samples from all 57 registered sex offenders in the Morgan Hill zip code were compared to the DNA evidence. Sierra's father, who had a criminal record, proactively contacted law enforcement and was quickly eliminated as a suspect. One of the local men who had not been ruled out as a suspect was Antolin Garcia-Torres. Following a DNA match between the 21-year-old man and Sierra's pants, he came to public attention. At the time, he lived in Maple Leaf Recreational Vehicle Park with his mother, pregnant wife, and daughter, about 7 miles from Sierra's house. Antolin Garcia-Torres had a troubling past, had a challenging upbringing marked by abuse and neglect. His father, who was abusive and often drunk, had threatened to kill him and his mother before being imprisoned for molesting a young family member. The father's abusive behavior appears to have been passed on to his son. Although 2009 allegations of having sex with a minor were dismissed, Antolin Garcia-Torres's DNA was collected. He was also detained in 2010 for impeding police operations. Due to the suspicious relationship between he and Sierra, detectives put him under constant surveillance. As it was unclear whether Sierra was still alive, Antolin Garcia-Torres was the most likely person to have information. To monitor his activities, police tapped his phone, placed a GPS tracker in his car, and had 2 undercover investigators move into a vehicle park next to his house. After discovering that the vehicle park had cameras at the front door, investigators began reviewing security footage from the neighborhood around Antolin Garcia-Torres's residence. They examined the film taken on the day of Sierra's disappearance to determine whether Antolin had left or arrived home. It was discovered that Antolin had left the campground in his red Volkswagen Jetta at 7 a.m. on the morning she vanished. Given that his home was only 7 miles from Sierra, Antolin's travel time matched the period during which Sierra could have been kidnapped. Although Antolin had left for work at the usual time, Safeway's shift records showed that he did not arrive at work on Sierra went missing. It was found that 3 years prior, there were 3 unsuccessful kidnapping attempts in the Safeway parking lot. But none of the perpetrators were identified or detained. The only evidence from these attempts was a taser dropped by the perpetrator, which had a fingerprint on one of its batteries. However, it was only a partial fingerprint, requiring a direct one-to-one comparison to match. The idea seemed promising, but when Antolin's fingerprints were compared to those on the taser, a surprising revelation emerged. In reality, their suspect was indeed Antolin. Antolin was taken into custody by investigators after being positively identified as someone who was present when Sierra went missing. His DNA was found on her pants, and he had a history of involvement in kidnappings. This evidence was enough to detain him for questioning and to seize his vehicle for further DNA testing. During the interview, the suspect, Antolin, showed arrogance and was dismissive of the questions. He claimed that on the day Sierra vanished, he had gone fishing and didn't know who she was. He was confident that the investigators wouldn't find any evidence against him. However, before the interview ended, Antolin made a strange revelation. He admitted to having a habit of strangling a snake while driving and then throwing the tissue out the window. He also claimed to have thrown out a used tissue in the exact spot where Sierra's bag was found on the morning she went missing. We already had a 1 in a million chance with the rain on Sierra's phone, and the police didn't believe Antolin's implausible explanation either. On May 21, 2012, Antolin Garcia-Torres was formally detained in connection with Sierra LaMar's disappearance outside his workplace in a Safeway parking lot. This was the result of several distinct links between Sierra and Antolin's vehicle. A DNA test found her DNA on the interior door handle of the car's rear door. Additionally, fibers from the car seats matched those found on Sierra's clothing, and a piece of rope inside the car contained a strand of her hair. This proved beyond a doubt that she had been in his car at some point. However, even after his arrest, there was a significant issue. Despite the apparent evidence, Sierra's body had yet to be found. Could they accuse Antolin of first-degree murder without a body or verified death? In reality, Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosen announced on May 19, 2014, that he would seek the death penalty against Antolin. Although Antolin had previously pleaded not guilty to killing Sierra, the overwhelming evidence pointed to his guilt. Antolin's trial began on January 30, 2017, after being delayed. The trial was prolonged and stressful for all parties involved, with the prosecution and defense presenting lengthy arguments over 13 weeks of testimony. Antolin's defense team argued that his exposure to pesticides from surrounding fields during his childhood may have impaired his cognitive abilities. They claimed that this exposure was not his fault and, as a result, he should not be eligible for the death penalty. The defense argued that Antolin faced a unique disadvantage due to circumstances beyond his control. In a final attempt, Antolin's defense team requested a new trial, questioning the chief investigator's reliability and honesty, and alleging that he had tampered with evidence in the past. However, this attempt was denied. The jury convicted Antolin Garcia-Torres of Sierra LaMar's first-degree murder on May 9, 2017. The evidence was so overwhelming against Antolin that he was unable to escape responsibility for his acts, even though Sierra's body has never been located. Outside of the evidence offered, Antolin was formally given a life sentence without the chance of parole after being spared the death penalty. Since his sentencing, Antolin has stayed largely silent, and despite receiving hundreds of letters from news organizations and total strangers, only one letter has been answered. Antolin wrote, I hold fast to my innocence, and I'm not going to talk about the matter. It's puzzling why Antolin continues to claim innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against him. The presence of his DNA on Sierra's belongings, her DNA in his car, his past crimes, and a detailed timeline all clearly indicate his involvement in Sierra's disappearance. The search for Sierra LaMar is believed by some organizers to be the longest continuous search for a missing person in U.S. history. It spanned 3 years, with over 1,100 searches conducted within a 15-mile radius, totaling 50,000 man-hours of effort. Volunteers braved extreme weather conditions, from scorching summers to cold winters, in their quest for any information about Sierra. Despite the passing of time, many volunteers continue to search for her, driven by the desire to bring closure to her family, even though they acknowledge the likelihood of her being deceased. Currently, the whereabouts of Sierra's body remain unknown, but the hope is that one day, the LaMar family will find the closure they seek. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Anna Repkina. Anna Repkina, a 27-year-old woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, she was a bright and ambitious individual from a good family. Her outlook on life was optimistic, and she yearned for love. Anna dreamed of getting married, starting a family, and building a home. Those who knew her remembered her infectious sense of humor and delightful personality. However, in 2016, Anna's world was turned upside down when her high school sweetheart ended their relationship of 7 years. Despite her heartbreak, she was determined to find true love and live a happy, fulfilling life. Anna decided to try online dating and signed up for several websites. She quickly matched with a man named William Hargrove on a Russian dating site. William, a 26-year-old from Oregon. He showered her with kindness and compliments, making an effort to be present for her despite the distance between them. People who know William describe him as a charismatic and humorous person. As Anna and William's online relationship progressed, they spoke every day and became more serious over the course of a few months. They shared many common interests, and Anna and William got along very well. William was the sweetest, he kept sending her flowers. Soon, they started talking about meeting in person. The chemistry was already there over the cell phone. Anna and William decided to meet in person, taking their months-long relationship one step further. In December 2016, Anna booked a flight to visit William in Oregon. However, there was a mix-up. Anna had accidentally booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time the mistake was discovered, Anna had already arrived in Maine. Determined to spend the Christmas holidays with William, Anna rebooked her flight and arrived in Oregon just in time. William was there to greet her at the airport. Over the next 10 days, they experienced the ultimate festive romance. William also introduced Anna to his friends. And they shared a magical New Year's Eve countdown together, sealing their connection with a romantic kiss at midnight. At the end of Anna's 10-day visit, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was already involved with someone else, his landlord, Michelle Chavez. Michelle was a 33-year-old married woman with 2 kids, but that didn't stop her and William's romantic relationship, which had been going on for over a year. When Anna visited William, she met Michelle, who was introduced to her as William's landlord, unaware of the true nature of their relationship. Michelle seemed to be aware of William's intentions to propose to Anna, but she didn't reveal their secret, possibly because she believed William would never leave her. Anna had returned to Russia after getting engaged to William and posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, revealing the shocking news. Michelle was not only angry that her boyfriend, William, was engaged to another woman, but Michelle had also planned to leave her husband for him. In fact, Michelle had already taken off her wedding ring and given it to William as a symbol of her commitment. What Michelle didn't know was that William had given Anna the same ring that Michelle had given him. When Michelle confronted William about the engagement, he downplayed the situation, claiming that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement. However, on March 1, 2017, Anna returned to Oregon, ready to start her new life with William, bringing her wedding dress and a suitcase with her. She had even quit her job, expecting to be with William forever. Michelle was unhappy about the situation. Anna's mother, Elena, had previously expressed concerns about her daughter moving to a new country for a man she barely knew. Elena thought Anna was moving too quickly, but Anna insisted she was in love and didn't see the need to wait. Elena eventually gave her blessing. However, Michelle was furious when she realized Anna's visit was actually a permanent move. She asked William to find a new place to live, as she didn't want the engaged couple staying with her. William agreed and rented an apartment for himself and Anna. Despite this, William continued to secretly visit Michelle, reassuring her of his commitment to her and downplaying his relationship with Anna. Michelle grew increasingly worried about how serious Anna and William's relationship was becoming, so she decided to take action. She contacted Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on behind her back. Anna shared with William everything Michelle had told her, but he dismissed it as mere jealousy from an ex-girlfriend. Anna trusted William's explanation and decided to move forward with their wedding plans. They had set a date of March 23 to get married by the sea. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, but the officiant failed to arrive. After a long wait, they returned home. According to William, the officiant was ill, and Anna believed him. However, William had been clear about his feelings. He didn't love Anna and saw her as unimportant. Despite this, Anna refused to accept the reality of the situation. Michelle was exhausted with the situation. On April 15, she had reached her limit and told William he had to make a decision, her or Anna. Michelle made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate him leading a double life any longer. Michelle told William that if Anna wasn't out of the picture by Thursday, April 20th, she would take drastic action. When she said she would build a snowman, Michelle meant that she would harm or kill Anna and hide the body in a remote, cold location where it would never be found. After her conversation with William, Michelle couldn't reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna and left him several voicemails to express her feelings. However, the next day, Sunday, April 16th, William called Michelle and told her that he was now single. He explained that he and Anna had broken up and she was returning to Russia. It was Easter Sunday, and Michelle had been attending a family gathering. However, Michelle left her family's celebration to meet William. They of them reconnected and reaffirmed their relationship by being intimate in William's car. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in a forest, but the investigators had no idea who she was. She didn't have any identification on her and had only been in the state for about a month, making it difficult to start the investigation. There was no murder weapon at the scene, but among the trash scattered around her body was a clear plastic bag. Inside the bag, detectives found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a used KFC chicken wrapper. The KFC receipt turned out to be a crucial piece of evidence. The receipt contained the date, time stamp, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas, the owner of the debit card. Kevin, it turned out, was a close friend of William's. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he and William were very close. Kevin also mentioned that he and William had a tradition of going to KFC for lunch every Friday. The receipt was from a purchase made about a week before William was questioned by the police. During the questioning, the police mentioned that they had found garbage from KFC in the trash, which they believed was from the previous week. William acknowledged that he and Kevin regularly went to KFC on Fridays. It was revealed that Kevin had paid for his meal with a credit card, while William had paid in cash. Kevin had previously told the police about William's complicated relationship situation, which had only come to light during the investigation into Anna's death. Kevin also mentioned that William had borrowed his shotgun, but had not returned it. According to Kevin, William had said he wanted to borrow the shotgun to go to the woods and relieve some stress. After hearing Kevin's statement, the police began to focus their attention on William and Michelle. From the day Anna died, William had been acting strangely and suspiciously. Following the death of his fiancée, Mr. William Hargrove was witnessed displaying unusual behavior. He withdrew funds from her bank account and spent them on items such as cigars and Star Wars Legos. He justified these purchases to his friend Kevin by saying he was trying to alleviate his grief. However, this behavior was compounded and Mr. Hargrove began researching time travel, even going so far as to offer his soul in exchange for the opportunity to travel back in time. When asked why he wanted to travel back in time, Mr. Hargrove explained that he wanted to return to April 16th to prevent his friend from making a mistake. However, this claim appears dubious, as on the same date, Mr. Hargrove was recorded crying in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had left him. This raises doubts about the sincerity of his claim, particularly as he had been living with Michelle, despite her not being his anymore. William was taken into custody by the police and questioned. Initially, they asked him about his whereabouts on April 16th. William stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. However, when questioned about his relationship with Anna, William claimed they were just acquaintances, having met while walking in downtown Corvallis. He told the police that they had gone on 2 dates, but he had made it clear to her that he wasn't interested in pursuing a romantic relationship. According to William, he last saw Anna in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused tension with his actual partner, Michelle. The police then asked William about the trash found near the area where his acquaintance, Anna, was last seen. William admitted to littering, but claimed that he had disposed of his trash, including KFC waste and a trash can. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators who questioned William Hargrove, revealed that trash that implicated him had been found near Anna's body. Initially, William pretended to be shocked and distressed upon hearing this. However, his demeanor quickly changed and he requested a lawyer. Despite denying any involvement, William was arrested on April 19th, 2 days after the body of Anna Repkina was discovered. Following William's arrest, Michelle was also brought in for questioning. When questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, Michelle provided a rehearsed alibi, stating that she and William spent the day driving together after he picked her up from her mother's house. However, her story changed later as she admitted to lying initially. She then claimed that William had planned to call and pick her up, but never followed through. During the interrogation, the police revealed shocking information to Michelle. Her boyfriend of a year and a half was now in custody for murder. Her initial reaction was surprisingly calm, but when the investigator pointed out her unusual reaction, Michelle's emotions finally surfaced. William was facing serious charges, including murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft. His trial began in October 2019, nearly a year after his indictment in June 2018. The prosecution was pushing for the maximum penalty, presenting a strong case against William with evidence and a clear motive. However, the defense argued that William was innocent and that Michelle, his scorned lover, was the real culprit. Evidence suggested that William had a motive to commit the crime, as he was being pressured by another lover to choose between Anna and Michelle. Additionally, records showed that William and Anna had driven together in the same car on the day of the murder. Furthermore, cell phone records placed William near the crime scene at 4:30 p.m. on the day of the murder, near Logging Road. The gun used to kill Anna was discovered in William's car, with only his fingerprints on it. William was using Anna's money to go shopping and pay his car insurance. He was even caught withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. According to the prosecution, William had driven Anna to a secluded forest area where he killed her with his shotgun in a deliberate and calculated manner. The motive, they argued, was that William had to choose between Anna and Michelle, and he chose to eliminate Anna. Michelle explained how she met William and the nature of their relationship. She was a late-night cab driver, and her husband was a university instructor. However, their marriage was loveless. One evening, she met William at the bar where he worked. She began a romantic relationship with him. Over time, they grew extremely close, and William even rented a room in her house to be nearer to her. Michelle and William had an open relationship. When Anna first appeared, Michelle was not worried. However, when Anna visited more often, Michelle felt threatened, especially when she saw her wedding ring on Anna's finger. Michelle forced William to choose between her or Anna, but she insisted that she had nothing to do with William's actions that hurt Anna. She stressed that she never intended for Anna to be hurt or worse, killed. Michelle addressed the defense's allegations against her. She explained that the building a snowman threat was a joke, albeit an extreme one. She admitted that her cell phone was found in the forest, but claimed that William had driven her there without her knowledge of his intentions. Finally, Michelle stated that William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by authorities, and she had kept it for him because he was her partner. After nearly a month of court appearances, the judge requested a verdict from the jury. Deliberations took under 3 hours, and ultimately, the defense was unable to link Michelle to Anna's death. Unlike William, Michelle had no forensic evidence tying her to the crime scene or the weapon. Multiple witnesses corroborated her alibi, confirming that she was at her mother's house celebrating Easter at the time of the incident. William pleaded not guilty, but due to overwhelming evidence, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. His lawyer indicated that they would file an appeal. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Chris Watts. Shanann and Chris Watts. The two met in 2012 and were both from North Carolina, with Shanann from Aberdeen and Chris from Spring Lake. They got married on November 3, 2012. Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, did not attend the wedding due to their strained relationship with Shanann. Cindy later explained that she didn't get along with Shanann and felt she treated her son poorly. After a year of marriage, Shanann and Chris made a significant decision to buy a new home in Frederick, Colorado. This move marked a new beginning for the couple as they started their life together in their new home. Shanann's lifelong dream of becoming a mother finally came true on December 17, 2013, with the birth of her daughter, Bella. 2 years later, on July 17, 2015, she welcomed her second daughter, Celeste. Those who knew Shanann described her as a kind and compassionate person who radiated love and positivity. She always strived to create the best life for herself and her family. As a mother, Shanann loved her two daughters, Bella and Celeste, more than anything in the world. Shanann was devoted to providing her children with the care and support they needed to thrive. Bella, the older of the two sisters, was a compassionate and caring child who naturally took on a protector role with her younger sister Celeste. From a young age, Bella showed a strong desire to look out for Celeste's well-being. Celeste, on the other hand, was a lively and energetic child who brought joy and laughter to everyone around her. Shanann was active on social media, using it to share videos that showcased her personality in daily life. Her friends and family enjoyed these videos, which often featured her husband Chris and their daughters. In her posts, Shanann frequently expressed her deep love and gratitude for Chris. While Shanann's loved ones admire their happy marriage, they also noticed that Chris tends to be reserved and not easily approachable. However, because Shanann clearly loves him, they respect his presence in Shanann's life. In June 2015, Shanann and Chris Watts faced severe financial difficulties and decided to file for bankruptcy. The couple struggled with a large mortgage, car payments, loans, and medical bills, in addition to a substantial amount of credit card debt. At the time, Chris worked at Anadarko Petroleum, while Shanann was employed at a hospital call center. A year later, in 2016, Shanann began a new career as a consultant for a multi-level marketing company called Lovell, where she sold a nutritional supplement called Thrive, which was delivered through a patch. Her colleagues say Shanann is passionate about her work, with one colleague describing her as having a charisma that makes everyone feel welcome and supported. Although Shanann was happy with her life with Chris and their 2 daughters, she had always dreamed of having a 3rd child, a baby boy, to complete their family. Her wish was granted in spring 2018, when she discovered she was pregnant for the 3rd time. Elated by the news, Shanann planned a surprise for Chris. She waited for him to return home on May 28. Chris walked into the room, not knowing the surprise that awaited him. When Shanann revealed that she was pregnant with a baby boy. After hearing the news, both Chris and Shanann were overwhelmed with joy. They decided to name their unborn child Nico. During the summer of 2018, while pregnant with Nico, Shanann visits her family in North Carolina. Chris stays behind in Colorado for work. While in North Carolina, Shanann takes her daughters to visit Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie. During the visit, Cindy offers Celeste a snack. Despite knowing that Celeste has a severe nut allergy, Cindy gives Celeste a snack containing peanuts. This incident upsets Shanann, who feels that Cindy has put Celeste's life in danger. Shanann was upset and sent a text message to Chris expressing her frustration. She told him he should call his dad and tell him how he felt about his mom putting their daughter's safety at risk that day. Shanann believed Chris's mom was trying to upset her by taking risks with their child's life. While Shanann was visiting family in North Carolina, she noticed a change in Chris's communication style. He stopped responding to her messages and calls, which left her confused. When she asked him about it, Chris said he was busier at work due to new employees and that everything was fine. Despite his reassurance, Chris's sudden lack of communication concerned Shanann. On July 31st, Chris flew from Colorado to North Carolina to join Shanann and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, for the week. The girls were excited to see their dad, and as soon as Chris stepped off the plane, they ran to him, eager for hugs. Chris picked them up and held them tightly. Chris's behavior toward Shanann was clearly different. He didn't greet her with a kiss, just a nod of acknowledgement. Shanann felt hurt and couldn't understand why Chris would act this way. She opened up to a friend via text message, expressing her concern that Chris had changed. Shanann's texts were filled with sadness and confusion. She told her friend that Chris was ignoring her, and they were barely communicating, even when they were in the same room. Instead of talking face-to-face, they were exchanging messages on their phones. Shanann even sent a picture to her friend, showing her and Chris sitting on separate couches, facing away from each other. In her messages, Shanann revealed her suspicions that Chris might be having an affair. Shanann confided in her friend that Chris had told her he no longer believed they were compatible, which left her heartbroken. Desperate to save their family, she proposed that they seek couples counseling to work through their issues. She was willing to make concessions and put in the effort to repair their relationship. However, Chris refused to consider counseling. Shanann soon realized that Chris was not willing to meet her halfway or make any compromises. Despite her efforts to save their relationship, Shanann came to understand that Chris was not interested in finding common ground or working through their problems together. After returning to Colorado from a trip to North Carolina, Shanann, Chris, and their daughters settled back into their normal routine. However, Shanann's return was short-lived, as she soon left for a business trip to Arizona. While in Arizona, Shanann's friends noticed a change in her behavior. She seemed anxious and upset, rather than her usual happy self. One evening, Shanann opened up to her friends in their hotel room, sharing her concerns. She told them that Chris had expressed doubts about their relationship and refused to attend couples therapy. On August 11th, while Shanann was with her friends in Arizona, she received a notification about a restaurant charge on the credit card account she shared with Chris, which raised her suspicions. She couldn't shake off the feeling that Chris might be seeing someone else. Around 1:48 a.m., Shanann returned home from her business trip. Shanann's close friend Nicole Atkinson drove her home. Footage from their doorbell camera confirmed that Shanann had indeed entered her house on August 13th. However, as the day progressed, Shanann failed to send her usual good morning messages, alarming her friends. A missed OB/GYN appointment scheduled for 9:30 a.m. did little to quell their concerns. However, when Shanann missed another engagement, a 12:30 p.m. business meeting, Nicole's concerns escalated, realizing something was seriously wrong as Shanann was now uncharacteristically incommunicado for the entire day. Nicole had a nagging feeling that something was wrong and decided to drive to Shanann's house. As she approached the house, her anxiety spiked. Shanann's truck was parked in a garage, which was very unusual. Nicole went to Shanann's house and knocked on the front door, hoping Shanann would answer and explain that she was just tired from her flight the day before. But Shanann didn't respond. Nicole contacted Shanann's husband, Chris, to see if he knew where she was. Chris told her not to worry, thinking that Shanann might have taken their daughter to visit a friend. However, this explanation did not make sense. Shanann didn't have any plans to meet up with her friends, and they were starting to get concerned. They told Chris that they were going to report Shanann and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, missing to the police. Chris didn't want to involve the police, but Nicole was worried about her friend and decided to call 911 to report them missing. When the police arrived at Shanann and Chris's house, an officer from the Frederick Police Department spoke with Nicole. The officer's body cam footage showed that Nicole was clearly distraught about her missing friend. As Nicole was explaining everything she knew about Shanann and her daughters, Chris arrived at the house. However, unlike Nicole, he didn't seem particularly worried about their disappearance. During the search of the house, the officer found Shanann's purse, which was surprising since she and her daughters were missing. Inside the purse, the officer discovered medication for Shanann and her two daughters, which added to the concern. The discovery of the purse made Nicole even more anxious, but Chris remained calm. The officer also found Shanann's wedding ring, left on the bedside table, which seemed unusual given the circumstances. The officer and Chris then went to a neighbor's house to review footage from their security camera. The camera's angle captured part of the driveway and garage of Shanann and Chris's house, which might provide some clues. Chris can be seen on footage opening the garage door and leaving his home at 5:28 a.m. While reviewing the footage, Chris's behavior changed dramatically, appearing nervous and agitated. His neighbor even commented on Chris's unusual behavior, expressing doubts to the officer about Chris's actions. Chris's reluctance to join the search for his missing wife, Shanann, and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, raised concerns with Shanann's friends. They found it incomprehensible that Chris was not worried about his family's disappearance. As the investigation continued, officers went door to door in the neighborhood, asking residents if they had seen Shanann or anything out of the ordinary. The search for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste intensified the next day, with the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation joining the effort. The Boulder Police Department also provided cadaver dogs to aid in the search, both on the property and inside the house. As officers searched the home, one handler observed that the house had a strong smell of cleaning solutions and appeared unusually clean. This sparked suspicion, prompting the officers to take a closer look. The presence of cleaning solutions suggested that someone may have attempted to conceal evidence or erase potential clues. Meanwhile, Chris gave an interview to a news station outside his home. He insisted that he and Shannon had not argued before she went missing and expressed his wish for his family to return home safely. Chris expressed his longing to be reunited with his family, stating that his house felt incomplete without them. However, his behavior during the interview raised suspicions. Despite his emotional words, Chris appeared detached and unemotional, which puzzled those who knew him. Shannon's friends who watched the interview felt his behavior was inconsistent with his pleas for his family to return, and that only added to their concerns. On August 14th, Agent Coder interviewed Chris again. During the conversation, Chris suggested that Shannon may have taken the girls to a friend's house to relax. Meanwhile, the police department had received multiple reports of possible sightings of Shannon and her two daughters. Chris was shown various photographs, but he was unable to identify any of the individuals as his missing wife and daughters. Agent Coder also asked Chris about his marriage to Shannon. Chris claimed that he had never been unfaithful to Shannon and, to his knowledge, she had never cheated on him either. During an interview with Agent Coder, Chris exhibited suspicious behavior, frequently touching his neck with his hands. This caught Agent Coder's attention. The lack of updates from the authorities only intensified the family's desperation. After a 3-hour interrogation, Chris was released from the police department, but he was asked to return the following day, August 15th, for a polygraph test, to which he agreed. On August 15th, Chris picked up his father from the airport and then drove to the Frederick Police Department, where he was scheduled to take a polygraph test. The test was administered by Tammy Lee, a polygraph expert from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. During the test, Chris denied any involvement in his wife Shannon's disappearance and claimed he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. However, his test results showed a score of -8, which was significantly lower than the -4 score needed to pass. This outcome led detectives to believe that Chris was responsible for the deaths of his wife and daughters. Tammy Lee, the polygraph expert, confronted Chris about his failed test results. Chris admitted to causing Shannon emotional pain, but denied physically harming her. He also confessed to having an affair with a coworker and expressed regret for his infidelity. However, he continued to deny any involvement in his family's disappearance. Later in the interview, Chris asked to speak to his father, Ronnie. The officers hesitated, worried that Ronnie's presence might cause Chris to ask for a lawyer. However, they let Ronnie into the interrogation room, hoping that Ronnie's presence might encourage Chris to confess. When Ronnie arrived, Chris told his father that he had killed Shannon, claiming that he did so because Shannon had harmed their daughters, Bella and Celeste. The detectives did not believe for a moment that Shannon had hurt her daughters. Chris eventually confessed to burying Shannon in a shallow grave at one of his work sites and disposing of the bodies of their daughters in oil tanks. Chris pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At his sentencing hearing, the judge stated that Chris's crimes were the most inhumane and brutal he had ever seen. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mary Katherine Higdon. Mary Katherine Higdon, born in 1994, was a lively child known for her sense of humor and ability to make others laugh with her witty remarks and impersonations. She enjoyed spending time outdoors and exploring nature, often taking walks around town with her pet frog perched on a shoestring. This early exposure to the natural world instilled in her a deep love and respect for the environment and animals. Mary was also a talented and creative performer. She regularly performed for her family in homemade plays, showing off her vivid imagination and ability to attract attention on stage. Her family recognized her natural talent and envisioned a bright future for her. As she grew older, Mary developed another passion, that was firearms. Under proper guidance, she learned to handle guns responsibly, respecting their power and potential. Through dedication and practice, Mary became a skilled marksman during her high school years. Mary Katherine met the love of her life, Steven Freeman, who was born on January 1, 1995, in Griffin, Georgia. He was raised in a close-knit family with his parents and brother. As a child, Steven was known to be happy and friendly, with many friends who described him as laid-back, kind, and helpful. Those who knew him said he genuinely cared for everyone around him. Steven had a deep appreciation for nature and enjoyed spending time outdoors. Their love for nature led them to enjoy activities like hiking, camping, fishing, and hunting together. This shared interest laid the groundwork for their robust relationship. After graduating from high school, they started a new chapter in their lives. As high school sweethearts, they decided to take their relationship to the next level by moving into a house together in Griffin, Georgia. Living in their own space excited Mary Katherine and Steven. Steven's mother welcomed Mary Katherine as more than just her son's partner. She genuinely considered her a daughter and accepted her into their family. Mary Katherine and Steven visited Steven's parents every Sunday for a big family dinner, a tradition that strengthened their bond and cemented Mary Katherine's place within the family. Steven's friends initially had reservations about his relationship with Mary Katherine. However, as they spent more time together, they grew to appreciate how well-suited Mary Katherine and Steven was. Mary Katherine brought happiness and joy into Steven's life, and her love for Steven was admirable. Steven worked as a metal worker and repaired roofs, while Mary Katherine was a part-time teacher's assistant at a preschool in Milner, Georgia. She also worked at a sporting goods store, where she sold guns and learned about basic gun safety, including how to hold, load, and shoot a gun. This experience was shared with Steven, who owned several firearms, including shotguns and rifles, which he used for hunting and target practice. He also kept a Glock 42 at home for protection. By the summer of 2018, Mary Katherine and Steven had been in a relationship for 5 years and were still living together in their apartment in Griffin, Georgia. However, their happiness was shattered on the night of August 1st when Mary Katherine made a frantic 911 call. When the dispatcher answered, Mary Katherine cried out that she had accidentally shot her boyfriend. The police quickly arrived at the apartment and found Mary Katherine in a state of distress. Mary Katherine, hysterical and overcome with grief, cried and hyperventilated as she knelt beside Steven's lifeless body, repeatedly screaming, "I cannot lose him." Her voice was filled with anguish and despair. As the police gently moved Mary Katherine away from Steven, they were able to assess his condition. They found that he had been shot in the chest but was still alive. An ambulance was called to rush Steven to the hospital, where doctors worked to save his life. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Steven's condition continued to worsen, and he eventually passed away due to the severity of his injuries. Mary Katherine accompanied the police to the police department for a formal interview after Steven was taken to the hospital. She began by recounting the events of the night that led to her accidentally shooting Steven. According to Mary Katherine, she was handing Steven the gun because he usually kept it on the side of his bed at night for safety. However, she stated that they never kept a bullet in the magazine of the guns. During the interview, the police noticed the smell of alcohol on Mary Katherine's breath. As the questioning continued, Mary Katherine's story about the shooting changed. Initially, she said she handed the gun to Steven, but later claimed she tossed it to him instead. The police were skeptical about her story, knowing that the gun would not fire randomly when thrown, and someone must have pulled the trigger. Furthermore, the location of Steven's gunshot wound led the police to believe that Mary Katherine must have been pointing the gun directly at him for the bullet to strike where it did. At one point during the interview, Mary Katherine said she shot Steven out of anger. However, due to technical issues, Only feedback was recorded during this part of the conversation, despite the police recording the entire interview. The police believed they had sufficient forensic evidence to prove that Mary Katherine deliberately shot her boyfriend Steven, even without a crucial part of the recording. At their apartment, investigators found signs of a heated argument before the shooting. The presence of scattered food throughout the house indicated that an altercation had taken place. Additionally, it was found that police officers had visited the house of Mary and Steven 5 times in the past year due to domestic disputes. The police also discovered evidence that the gun used to shoot Steven was loaded on the night of the incident, contradicting Mary Katherine's claims. Furthermore, cooking grease was also found on both the gun and the magazine. This discovery led the police to conclude that Mary Katherine, who was cooking dinner at the time, had loaded the gun. After Mary Katherine shot Steven, the police interviewed his friends to gather information about their relationship. According to Steven's friends, the relationship between Mary Katherine and Steven was toxic and marked by constant arguing. They reported that Mary Katherine and Steven frequently had heated confrontations. Steven's friends reported that Mary Katherine was extremely possessive and verbally abusive towards him. They claimed she showed signs of mental instability, which made their relationship increasingly tense. Whenever Steven tried to take some space and leave their apartment, Mary Katherine would bombard him with texts and calls, forcing him to block her. One friend revealed that Steven had confided in him about Mary Katherine pulling a gun on him at least 3 times in the past. Steven didn't report incidents to the police because he worried Mary Katherine would get in trouble. His primary concern was her well-being, even when his own safety was at risk. When his friends found out that Mary Katherine accidentally shot Steven, they struggled to believe it since she knew how to handle a firearm. 3 months before the shooting, Steven told a friend that Mary Katherine was behaving erratically, screaming outside, and trying to shoot both him and herself. A month later, Steven confided in another friend that Mary Katherine had pointed a gun at him before, but the most recent incident made him genuinely fear she would follow through. By July 2018, Steven was exhausted with Mary Katherine's behavior and considered leaving her after 7 years together. He planned to secretly move to a new town while she was out due to fearing her reaction if she knew. Police later discovered text messages from July 30, 2018, 2 days before Mary Katherine fatally shot Steven. The first text message sent by Steven to Mary Katherine on July 30 read, "Good morning, beautiful. Don't forget." Mary Katherine responded with, "Have a great day." Steven then replied, "You too. Love you." However, the police found that the following night, July 31st, Steven spent the evening at a friend's house and did not return Mary Katherine's texts or calls because they was fighting. On the night of the shooting, August 1st, Mary Katherine was at home preparing dinner, but Steven was not there. She reached out to Steven's mother. She informed her that Steven was with his friend. Angry at Steven, Mary Katherine started driving to his friend's house. As she drove, she spotted Steven sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's truck. Mary Katherine pulled alongside Steven's friend and started yelling at Steven. Steven tried to calm Mary Katherine down, assuring her that he was on his way home. Mary Katherine allegedly pointed a gun at Steven multiple times, according to his friends. However, Mary strongly denied these claims, stating she never pulled a gun on him. On another hand, Mary Katherine did admit to threatening to take her own life with a gun on several occasions. Steven's mother believed that he stayed with Mary Katherine due to her repeated threats of self-harm, which made Steven fear for Mary's life if he left. On the night of the incident, Mary Katherine claimed that Steven became violent, throwing the dinner she prepared in her face. She stated that she picked up the gun for self-defense, trying to scare Steven away and make him leave the apartment. According to her, Steven lunged at her, causing her to back away, and the next thing she knew, he was bleeding from the chest. At the time of Steven's shooting, Mary Katherine did not tell the police about Steven's history of violence towards her because she was embarrassed. According to Mary Katherine, Steven had been violent and controlling in the past, even kicking her out of bed with enough force to make her hit her head on the door frame. However, Steven's friends had a different perspective on the relationship. They claimed to have witnessed Mary Katherine hitting Steven, including one instance where she slapped him hard in the face. On the other hand, Mary Katherine's sister had a different view of their relationship. She reported seeing bruises on Mary Katherine's arm 2 weeks before Steven was shot. When she asked Mary Katherine about the bruises, Mary Katherine said that Steven had grabbed her. After investigating Steven's death, the police concluded that it was a murder. As a result, Mary Katherine was charged with murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The state offered Mary Katherine a plea deal and receive a life sentence with the possibility of parole. However, she rejected the offer and chose to went to trial, pleading not guilty and arguing that she shot Steven in self-defense. The trial began on June 17, 2019, nearly a year after Steven's death. Mary Katherine's attorneys claimed that she acted in self-defense, citing her genuine fear of Steven due to his violent and abusive history. They presented evidence of Steven's controlling, manipulative, and violent behavior to support their case. During the trial, Mary Katherine testified in her own defense, sharing emotional accounts of the constant abuse she suffered at the hands of Steven. She described a pervasive pattern of physical, mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse, stating that Steven would frequently hit her, humiliate her, and subject her. Mary Katherine reported that Steven subjected her to various forms of abuse. She shared instances where he physically and verbally abused her. The abuse had a profound impact on her physical and emotional well-being, leaving her feeling trapped and fearful for her life. During the trial, Mary Katherine's defense presented a text message from Steven, stating that she would be punished when he returned home. When questioned about the meaning of this message, Mary Katherine explained that Steven would physically abuse her and demand that she be a better girlfriend. The defense also presented another text message, in which Steven warned Mary Katherine not to hit him, threatening to retaliate with twice the force. In her testimony, Mary Katherine described a red room where Steven and Mary Katherine engaged in aggressive and sometimes violent intimacy, likening it to a concept from the popular book series, 50 Shades of Grey. Mary's defense attorneys presented a text message from Steven, which stated, "I miss you too much, I'm coming home, and you're about to get it bad, you're going to the red room." Mary Katherine also testified that Steven sexually assaulted her on 2 occasions, one of which occurred after they returned from a vacation to Walt Disney World. Mary Katherine reported that their intercourse had become increasingly aggressive, and she expressed her discomfort to Steven, asking him to stop. However, instead of heeding her pleas, Steven allegedly intensified his efforts. He claimed that she had received various gifts at Disney World and now owed him what was rightfully his. According to Mary Katherine, Steven told her that she had to give him what he wanted and what he deserved. The defense presented additional evidence in the form of text messages from Steven to support Mary Katherine's claims of abuse. These messages were vulgar, threatening, and demonstrated a pattern of verbal assaults directed towards Mary Katherine. The defense had over 60 pages of text messages from Steven that showcased his abusive behavior. One particular image sent while Steven was out with a group of friends was particularly disturbing. In the image, Steven was holding a large dead fish aloft with the caption, "This is you." Another message from Steven to Mary Katherine, after she cheated on him, read that he would wreck her for her wrecking him. The defense also alleged that Steven struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol, which led to violent outbursts. During the conversation about the night Mary Katherine shot Steven, she claimed that she ended their relationship, not Steven. According to Mary Katherine, Steven did not take the breakup and acted like he was going to attack her. Fearing for her safety, she grabbed a gun in self-defense. Mary Katherine stated that the last words she exchanged with Steven before shooting him were, "Get out of my house." However, Steven's friends and family disagreed with Mary Katherine's portrayal of him as violent, abusive, and dangerous. They described him as laid-back, friendly, and caring. His mother stated she was unaware of Steven sending Mary Katherine disturbing text messages or threatening violence. While she did not condone such behavior, she believed Steven only acted out of anger. During cross-examination, the state questioned Mary Katherine about never reporting the alleged abuse by Steven. The state also pointed out that hours before the shooting, Mary Katherine had been searching for violent and sexually explicit images online while babysitting. Mary Katherine claimed she was looking at those sites to get ideas to make Steven happy and convince him to stay with her. The state noted that Mary Katherine had altered her story about the night of the shooting at least 10 times since her initial interview a year prior to the trial. A crucial piece of evidence presented in court to support the prosecution's theory that Mary Katherine intentionally shot Steven was a text message he sent her. The message stated that she had pointed a gun at him multiple times before, and the last incident had scared him. Additionally, Steven's friends testified in court, sharing their accounts of witnessing Mary Katherine's abuse towards him. Their testimonies corroborated the prosecution's argument that Mary Katherine had a history of violence against Steven, contradicting her claims that he was the abuser. After deliberating for 4 hours, the jury delivered a verdict of not guilty on the charges of malice murder, felony murder, assault, and possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. As a result, Mary Katherine was released from prison. The verdict shocked Steven's loved ones, who were stunned by the decision. In a later admission, members of the jury revealed that they believed Mary Katherine had intentionally shot and killed Steven. However, they acknowledged that there was insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt why she had shot him. This lack of evidence made it challenging to determine whether the shooting was murder or justified as self-defense. The jury was also unable to reach a consensus on the validity of all the accusations against both Steven and Mary Katherine. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Somati Fonseca Fernandez. Somati Fonseca Fernandez was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Not much is known about her early family life. Somati grew up in Cuba, where she lived with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. She attended a local school. Somati often used force or deception to get what she wanted. Somati's striking looks and perfect figure make her a magnet, especially to men. Somati's beauty and charm are overshadowed by her greed, vanity, and self-interest, which ultimately drives men away. Furthermore, she is extremely jealous and aggressive. Somati, due to her youthful resemblance to Barbie, spent several years working at a Universal Company bookstore, dressing up as the iconic doll. After graduating from high school, Somati started a long-term relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Ballery, a local television journalist 16 years her senior. Their relationship resulted in the birth of children, Christopher in 1996 and Christina a year later. However, constant arguments and jealousy eventually led Somati to end the relationship in 2012. Shortly after, Osvaldo, 53, died suddenly. Osvaldo did not include Somati in his will. Somati took drastic action and seized Osvaldo's house, changing the locks to prevent relatives and heirs from entering. Somati also took away Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was furious and took Somati to court for theft. Police intervened and forced Somati to leave the house, but no criminal charges were filed against her. Somati had other relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, the father of Somati's third daughter, Maria. Although some reports claimed the couple were officially married, the relationship ended in divorce after a few years. It was strange that some of Somati's lovers disappeared or died mysteriously under mysterious circumstances. But for a long time, for some reason, no one paid any attention to it. Another former lover, Diaco, met a tragic end after breaking up with Somati. He was murdered during a robbery. The killers were never caught or brought to justice. As with the previous case, there was much speculation surrounding Somati's possible involvement, but there was no solid evidence linking her to the crime. Somati's most famous victim was Herard Cruz. Herard Cruz, a native of Costa Rica, was born in December 1992 in the city of San Jose. Herard Cruz lived with his mother, Ana Patricia, who soon married a man named Hermes Rodriguez, who raised Herard Cruz as his own son. Herard Cruz attended a regular school, developed a passion for motorcycles, and met his future partner, Carol, at a young age. By the time he was 23, Herard had settled down with Carol and their 4-year-old daughter, Genesis, in the suburban home of his aunt and uncle in San Sebastian. To support his family, Herard Cruz took a job at a local bakery. It was around this time, in the summer of 2015, that Herard Cruz met Somati, a 40-year-old woman who frequented the bakery. Despite her age, Somati was attractive. Somati began having affairs with men much younger than herself, because the attention of young lovers probably delighted Somati. Herard Cruz was one such affair. Despite the significant age difference, Herard Cruz quickly fell in love with Somati and began to meet secretly. Somati came to the bakery every day to see Herard Cruz, and other employees took notice of Somati's frequent visits. Somati would bring his 19-year-old daughter, Christina, with him to the bakery. Initially, Herard Cruz was able to balance his family life and secretly date Somati without either woman finding out. He eventually let his guard down. He began bragging about his success with women and began sharing stories with friends and colleagues about Somati, describing her as a great mistress who showered him with gifts. After just a few months together, in October 2015, Somati discovered the truth about Herard Cruz having a pregnant wife and a child. Somati was so angry that she started calling and texting Carol, Herard Cruz's wife, insulting her and threatening to kill Herard Cruz if he didn't belong to her. Herard Cruz tried to beg Carol's forgiveness. As for Somati, he did not take her threat seriously, believing that she would quickly calm down and find a new boyfriend. Just days after breaking up with Somati, Herard Cruz saw a man secretly filming a young girl's underwear with his phone. Herard Cruz filmed the man, stopped the girl, and advised her to report the incident to the police. He then chased the man, trying to capture his face on camera, until the man escaped in a taxi. Herard Cruz posted the video online and it quickly went viral. The man was identified as Luis Somano Delgado, a former member of the Ministry of Finance. The media picked up the story, and Herard Cruz became a national celebrity, outing Luis Somano Delgado in interviews. However, Luis Somano Delgado's lawyer accused Herard Cruz of wrongdoing, claiming that the video's distribution was illegal and preparing to file a lawsuit. Herard Cruz was surprised, wondering why he was being prosecuted instead of the man who committed the crime. Herard Cruz gave a radio interview confidently, without fear. The next day, he canceled his meeting with Oswald, citing an emergency after receiving a text message from Somati, supposedly to discuss another interview with a young woman in a park. Unsuspecting, Herard Cruz met with her, but instead of journalists, 2 men stole his bag, beat him, and stabbed him multiple times. Herard Cruz called Oswald when he was unconscious, and Oswald called the police and paramedics. Herard Cruz was taken to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life for 42 days. Herard Cruz underwent numerous operations, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in saving his life. He passed away in the intensive care unit on November 19. Herard Cruz's funeral was attended by a large number of people who wanted to express their condolences to his family. The community came together to express their hope that the police would quickly apprehend the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Initially, the investigation explored multiple theories. The first was that Cruz was a victim of a robbery gone wrong. This seemed plausible, given that he was attacked in a park, his bag was stolen, and he was stabbed with a knife. The first theory is that Herard Cruz was the victim of a botched robbery, as he was attacked in a park, his bag stolen, and stabbed. However, Herard Cruz recently released a video exposing a nationally known former official, which has fueled another theory, that the attack was a revenge killing. The media speculated that the former official, Sol Mano Delgado, may have hired a hitman to silence Herard Cruz, who had tarnished his reputation. The murder has sparked widespread debate in the press. Police later identified and tracked down the two men. The footage was made public and shown repeatedly on news programs, with viewers encouraged to watch the footage closely. Soon after, the identity of one suspect was confirmed when he voluntarily surrendered to the police, cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a reduced sentence. The investigation quickly identified several accomplices and organizers of the crime, Somati and her daughter Christina, thanks to information provided. Those involved, including taxi driver Ronald Archie, worker Cesar Chavez, a young miner, and Omar Costa, were arrested. The investigation revealed the roles and connections of all those involved in the crime through phone calls and text messages. Somati was identified as the mastermind, who had carefully planned the murder for his daughter Christina. They enlisted the help of friends Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez to find two assassins to kill Herard Cruz and stage a robbery in the park at night. Omar Costa later joined the plot, tasked with ensuring Herard Cruz was present at the park. Somati chose October 7th as the date of the massacre. Somati kept in constant contact with all the suspects, assigning roles and ensuring everyone followed the plan. Furthermore, Somati asked the participants to take an item from Herard Cruz as proof that the crime had been completed. The evidence against Somati was a series of text messages outlining the murder plan and the roles of each participant in detail. The motive behind the crime was a case of jealousy. She had carefully planned the crime and even involved her own daughter, who assisted her in every step of the process. Both Somati and her daughter were taken into custody immediately, and the possibility of releasing them on bail was ruled out due to concerns that they would attempt to flee the country. Their accomplices were also detained, except for Omar Costa, who was responsible for surveillance and was the youngest participant in the crime. As a minor, Omar Costa was handed over to authorities that specialize in handling juvenile offenders. The investigation took about a year and a half to complete, and the trial did not begin until December 2017. It was discovered that Somati had a history of criminal activity. The verdict was not announced until January 23, 2018. According to the court decision, Somati was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Her daughter, as well as Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez, received 25 years in prison each. Omar Costa, on the other hand, who had been following the victim, was acquitted. Herard Cruz's family has received $140,000 in moral damages. After the verdict was announced, relatives expressed gratitude to the court for giving Herard Cruz's killers a fair punishment. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Mike Williams. Jerry Michael Williams was born on October 16, 1969, in Bradfordville, just north of Tallahassee. His parents worked as a bus driver and a kindergarten teacher. To those close to him, he was known as Mike. Despite financial struggles, which led to Mike and his older brother being raised in a trailer, but their childhood was filled with happiness. Furthermore, Mike's parents prioritized their son's education, setting aside money for their future instead of building a new home. Both boys attended North Florida Christian High School, where Mike excelled academically and socially. He served as student council president, played soccer, and actively participated in the Key Club. At 15, Mike developed a passion for duck hunting and met Denise Merrill, a cheerleader and council secretary. They began dating and formed a close bond. Their friends viewed Mike and Denise as a well-suited couple. During high school, Denise introduced Mike to Brian Winchester, and they became inseparable friends. Brian later befriended Kathy Thomas, and the two couples remained lifelong friends. After graduating from high school, Mike attended Florida State University, where he studied political science and urban planning. Denise and Mike graduated together, with Denise becoming a public accountant and Mike pursuing a career as a real estate appraiser. Mike was a hardworking individual who consistently put in 15-hour days, which ultimately led to his rapid career advancement. His personal life also flourished, as he married Denise in 1994. Around the same time, his friend Brian married Kathy. The two couples remained close friends. Mike was deeply devoted to his wife and worked tirelessly to provide for their family, exhibiting remarkable enthusiasm and dedication. At 31, Mike Williams was thriving as a real estate appraiser, earning nearly $200,000 annually. He and his wife lived in a small upscale neighborhood on the east side of town, and welcomed a daughter, Ensley, in 1999. Despite engaging in risky activities, but he was always cautious and wanted to ensure that his family would be well provided for in the event of an emergency. He turned to his best friend, Brian, an insurance agent, to purchase 2 insurance policies, one for $250,000 and another for $500,000. After his father's sudden death in 2000, Mike felt a strong need to secure his family's financial future, so he turned to a friend for help again. Brian assisted him in obtaining a life insurance policy with a value of $1 million. 6 months before Mike disappeared, he bought life insurance worth nearly $2 million. On December 16, 2000, Mike woke up early to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole, a large reservoir connected to the Apalachicola River. It was Mike's 6th wedding anniversary, and he planned to celebrate with his wife Denise that night. However, when Denise and their daughter waited for Mike to return home at noon, he failed to show up. Denise became concerned and called her father. Her father then contacted Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester. Brian and his father went to Lake Seminole, where they found Mike's Ford Bronco parked near the boat dock, but there was no sign of Mike. They searched the areas where Mike liked to hunt but couldn't find him or his boat. They decided to contact the police. Investigators from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency were called in, and a search for Mike began. Later, a helicopter pilot spotted the boat drifting 225 feet from the boat ramp. When the boat was searched, Mike's shotgun was found, still in its case, shows that he has not used it. The search operation shifted from rescue to recovery. Locals believe the area was once an orchard before the 3 rivers were dammed to create the lake. The lake was nicknamed Stump Field due to the numerous remaining tree stumps above and below the waterline, which posed a hazard to motorized boats. Searchers hypothesized that Mike's boat struck a stump, causing him to fall into the water. His boots, filled with water, may have weighed him down, leading to his possible drowning. Additional agencies, including a dive team from Montgomery, Alabama, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, joined the search. Despite a thorough search, but no signs of Mike were found. As the days passed, the operation transitioned from rescue to a body recovery mission. Search teams used probe poles to scour the lake's bottom, and service dogs were brought in to assist. 10 days after, a hunting hat with a camouflage pattern was found, but there was no evidence connecting it to Mike. Officials from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency speculated that Mike might have been consumed by alligators, which were abundant in the lake. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement found no evidence of foul play, reinforcing the theory that the incident was accidental. After a 5-week search, the effort to find Mike was halted. The following day, Denise organized a memorial service for her husband. Although Denise seemed to have accepted Mike's departure, his mother still found it difficult to accept. 6 months later, in June 2001, a fisherman discovered a pair of boots floating in the lake. A dive team searched the area and found a hunting jacket and a working flashlight on the lake floor. Inside the jacket pocket was Mike's hunting license, complete with his name and signature. The discovery raised several questions. Notably, neither the jacket nor the boots showed signs of an alligator attack, such as teeth marks. Additionally, none of the items appeared to have been in the water for 6 months, as the boots were not slimy. A week after the discovery, Denise's lawyer petitioned the court to declare Mike dead, citing the found items as evidence. The lawyers suggested that aquatic life, including alligators, might have consumed Mike's body entirely. The court approved this, and a death certificate was issued, stating that Mike died on December 16, 2000, due to accidental drowning while duck hunting on Lake Seminole. Mike's body was never recovered. Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, continues to search for her son, although this causes tension in her relationship with Denise. Denise demanded Cheryl stop searching and accept reality, threatening that if she continued, she would never see her granddaughter again. Cheryl refused to give up. She was determined to find Mike. Her perseverance ultimately led to the reopening of the investigation into Mike's disappearance. It took Cheryl 3 years of tireless efforts, including making phone calls, putting up signs, writing to the governor of Florida, compiling evidence, and contacting reporters, to convince law enforcement officials to open an investigation into Mike's disappearance. Cheryl later revealed that her contacted Matthew Oresco, an expert on alligators. Oresco explained that alligators do not eat during the cold winter months due to low water temperatures, and their main priority is maintaining body heat. Temperatures as low as 14 degrees make alligators uninterested in food. Additionally, according to Oresco, alligator attacks always leave behind forensic evidence. 3 years later, Cheryl convinced law enforcement to dismiss the alligator theory and start a formal investigation into her son's disappearance. New discoveries regarding the behavior of alligators prompted a re-examination of the case. Evidence from interviews and data suggested that Mike's death was not an accident. Former investigator Ronnie Austin stated, "My instinct tells me Mike did not die in Lake Seminole, and that's what most law enforcement agencies working on this case agree on." Austin worked on Mike's case at the 2nd District State's Attorney's Office. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency initially handled the case as a missing hunter incident. They dedicated 735 hours to searching a 10-acre area of the lake for Mike's body, but surprisingly they did not find any signs of crime. Years later, those involved in the search, including police officer David Arnett, who was present at the scene, expressed that several things seemed unusual from the start. Firstly, it was unusual for Mike to hunt alone. Additionally, his truck was found in an undeveloped area, which would have required him to drag the boat through mud, rather than using the nearby concrete boat launch that he typically used. The severe storm that night should have pushed the boat towards the east shore, but it was instead found on the west shore. Additionally, the boat's motor was not running, yet it was still full of gasoline. If Mike had been operating the boat and fallen out, the boat would have continued to float in circles until it ran out of fuel. Law enforcement initially believed Mike's death was a simple drowning, but they later began to suspect foul play. However, by that time, the crime scene had already been trampled by numerous volunteers and searchers. A vital piece of evidence, a vehicle, was taken by Mike's family without being inspected by investigators. Additionally, some potential witnesses were overlooked. Denise and Brian were identified as suspects when investigators found out that Brian had just gone through a divorce from his previous wife, Kathy, and then quickly married Denise. Furthermore, Denise had received nearly $2 million from Mike's life insurance policy. Detectives also found it suspicious that Brian had sold Mike the policy. The investigation raised more red flags when Denise, Mike's wife, showed no interest in helping with the investigation and tried to prevent Mrs. Cheryl from participating in search. Denise even prohibited Cheryl from speaking with her granddaughter. When questioned, Brian provided an alibi, claiming he was at home, 60 miles from the lake, on the morning of Mike's disappearance. His ex-wife, Kathy, corroborated his story. Brian also mentioned that he had planned to go hunting with his father-in-law that morning but overslept. Denise's interrogation did not reveal any new information. In 2008, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement concluded that Mike's disappearance was not an accident, which is a criminal offense. However, due to insufficient evidence, they were unable to prosecute. Despite this, Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, continued to seek answers. The case was featured on the Discovery Cable channel in 2011, but Cheryl became increasingly frustrated with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, feeling that they were either incompetent or uninterested in solving the case. In 2012, she began writing daily letters to Governor Rick Scott, requesting that he either reassign the investigation to another agency or appoint a special prosecutor. Over the course of 9 years, Cheryl sent 2,600 letters to the governor. Meanwhile, Denise and Brian's marriage was deteriorating. In 2012, Denise discovered Brian's infidelity, leading to their breakup. Denise filed for divorce the following year. During the lengthy divorce proceedings, an appraisal of their former home was scheduled in an effort to resolve their property disputes. This brought progress in Mike's case, as tensions between Denise and Brian reached a boiling point. Brian wanted to continue the marriage, but Denise wanted a divorce, because they were constantly arguing, and things were further complicated by the stress of Mike's investigation. Brian started calling Denise repeatedly, but she stopped answering his calls. He became overwhelmed by the stress in their relationship. On August 5, 2016, Denise was set to have her home appraised as part of a court order. That morning, she left her home to drive to work at Florida State University. While speaking with her sister on the phone, she noticed someone climbing over the back seat of her car. It was Brian. Brian pressed a loaded gun against Denise's and instructed her to drive straight ahead. Brian said he did this extreme thing because she had quit answering his phone calls. Denise attempted to calm Brian down by agreeing with him and promising to give their marriage another chance. Brian seemed to believe her. Denise assured him that she wouldn't report the incident to the police, and Brian exited the vehicle. As he left, he took several items with him, including a brown sheet, plastic sheeting, a bleach sprayer, and tools. It became clear that Denise had narrowly escaped a potentially fatal situation. She immediately called emergency services, and Brian was quickly arrested. He was charged with kidnapping, a first-degree felony in Florida that carries a maximum life sentence. He also faced charges of domestic violence and burglary. The court ordered Brian to be held without bail. Cheryl Williams expressed hope that Brian's arrest might lead to a breakthrough in her son's case. Cheryl shared with the New York Daily News, Brian did not want Denise to keep all that money for herself. Cheryl hoped Brian will reveal what really happened. And ultimately, Brian did share what had transpired. Brian managed to negotiate a very favorable deal with the prosecutor, avoiding a life sentence, and then began telling his story. He explained that it all started when he discovered a note in Kathy's purse, revealing that she was cheating on him. This sparked a desire for revenge in Brian. Around that time, Brian and his friends, including Denise and her husband Mike, would often go to bars and concerts together. Brian had known Denise since high school, but he had never been attracted to her until Kathy's infidelity. His perspective on Denise changed after being cheated on. In October 1997, Brian and Denise started an affair. Initially, it was just a casual encounter at a rock concert, but it quickly developed into regular and secret dates. They would meet at hotels during the workday whenever they had the chance. Brian made it clear that he did not want to divorce Kathy, and Denise was adamant that she would never leave her husband Mike, as she cared deeply about public opinion and did not want to risk losing custody of her daughter. As their relationship progresses, it deepens and they begin to consider themselves a couple, often exchanging gifts and writing romantic letters to each other. They realized they couldn't continue living like this, as they couldn't bear to be apart. However, Denise did not think about getting a divorce because she wanted people to think she was a good and moral person. Around this time, Mike had a near-death experience in a hunting accident, and Brian saved his life. This gave Denise a ray of hope that they could get out of their current situation. After negotiating the deal with the prosecutor, Brian revealed that in the year 2000, he and Denise started discussing the possibility of Mike and Kathy dying. Denise wanted to make it look like an accident rather than a murder. After considering various options, Brian and Denise planned to fake a boating accident. This would allow them to collect the maximum amount from Mike's life insurance policy before it expired at the end of December 2000. They devised a plan, and Brian invited Mike on a hunting trip to a spot on Lake Simal's shores, telling him to bring his wading boots. The boots were crucial, as it was believed that wearing them would lead to rapid drowning if Mike fell overboard. However, when Brian pushed Mike into the water, the plan didn't unfold as expected. Instead of sinking, Mike grabbed onto nearby stumps and began wading towards the shore. Brian was in a state of panic. He didn't know how to handle the situation. Mike was loudly calling for help, and Brian felt overwhelmed. In his panic, Brian grabbed his shotgun and shot Mike in the head without thinking. The plan had gone terribly wrong, and now Brian had to cover up the incident. Time was running out because he had to go home and prepare for a hunting trip with his father-in-law. Since no one knew Brian was at the lake with Mike, he decided to return home and pretend he had overslept. He drove back, hoping to find his wife, Kathy, still asleep. Brian entered the house quietly, finding Kathy asleep and his phone on the floor. He went to bed, called his father-in-law to apologize, and began creating an alibi for himself. Meanwhile, he hid Mike's body. Denise didn't know what really happened when Mike went missing. Brian attempted to confess to her, but she refused to listen. She preferred to believe that Mike's disappearance was an act of God, allowing her to move on with her life. According to Brian, he and Denise made a promise to each other to keep the truth hidden forever. Denise and Brian claimed that Mike's death was necessary because they couldn't live together. They stated that the life insurance payout was just an added benefit. Brian would later testify in court. However, investigators discovered that Brian had planted evidence, including a hat, boots, flashlight, and license, to mislead searchers and create false evidence to declare Mike dead, allowing Denise to collect the insurance. Denise received around $2 million, including Social Security and other benefits. On May 8, 2018, Denise was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and accessory to a felony, carrying a life sentence. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. In February 2019, Denise was sentenced to life in prison. 5 months later, her daughter Ansley received Mike's assets and insurance payout. Denise appealed the conviction and life sentence in January 2020. Her attorney arguing before the Florida First District Court of Appeal that there was no evidence of her direct involvement in the murder. In November 2020, Denise's murder conviction was overturned. However, her 30-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder was upheld, and she is currently serving her sentence at the Florida Women's Reception Center. Denise is expected to be released when she is 78 years old. Brian was transferred to the Madison Correctional Institute in Florida to serve the remainder of his sentence. He is scheduled to be released on July 30, 2036, when he will be 67 years old. Ansley, Mike and Denise's daughter, maintains her mother's innocence and blames Brian. Ansley has refused to speak to the media about the case and personal life. According to Cheryl and Nick, Ansley's uncle, they have been unable to reconnect with Ansley. Cheryl expressed her sorrow, stating that she has not only lost her son but also her connection with her granddaughter. Thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg was born in June 1993 in New York to Santa and George Greenberg. She is an only child and grew up in a loving environment. During her high school years, she was very active in sports. Ellen was very sociable and also did well in her studies. After finishing high school, she attended Pennsylvania State University. However, when she started working in her field, Ellen realized that it was not her true passion. While working, Ellen also enrolled in a correspondence course at a teacher training academy. A few years later, she successfully completed her degree and moved to Philadelphia, where she became a junior high school teacher at a local school. Ellen's life was going well. She truly enjoyed working with her students. During this time, Ellen began a relationship with a young man named Samuel, also known as Sam Goldberg. He came from a wealthy and prominent family. Samuel's parents owned a large business and his uncle was known as one of the best lawyers in the state. Ellen and Samuel met at a party in 2009 through friends and quickly developed feelings for each other. Their relationship quickly developed and they later decided to live together. In 2011, Samuel proposed to Ellen with a diamond ring. The happy couple began planning their wedding, scheduled for the spring of that year. In January 2011, Ellen went to work at school as usual, but around noon, a strong wind and snowstorm caused classes to be canceled and both students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to her apartment, and then suddenly, Samuel also returned home. At 5 p.m., Samuel decided to go to the gym in their apartment complex. Samuel was gone for less than an hour, but when he returned, he found the apartment door locked from the inside and could not be entered. Samuel knocked loudly on the door and called Ellen's name. He then tried calling and texting Ellen, but there was no response. Samuel went down to the first floor to ask the security guard for help. Samuel explained the situation and asked the guard to open the door first. But the guard said that it was against his rules because he could not leave his post. Samuel then returned to his floor. He banged his shoulder on the door and on his first try, he broke the latch. It was very quiet inside. When he entered the kitchen, he saw a horrifying scene of Ellen lying on the floor, leaning against the cupboard door, her body stabbed multiple times and her clothes soaked in blood. Samuel quickly called an ambulance. When asked to check Ellen's pulse, Samuel hesitated and kept wondering if he really needed to do so. After a moment of silence, Samuel suddenly said that there was a knife protruding from Ellen's chest. Police arriving at the scene were surprised to find the door locked from the inside with a bolt, which Samuel had pushed open with his shoulder. There was no sign of forced entry or any intruder in the room. Nothing had been stolen from the apartment. During Ellen's autopsy, there were no signs of struggle or any attempt to defend herself, suggesting that the incident occurred suddenly and the victim had no time to react. Ellen's autopsy found about 20 stab wounds of varying depth, the fatal stab wound to her heart. Ellen struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. The situation became so severe that she sought the help of a psychologist. The initial assumption of the police, before the autopsy, was that Ellen had committed suicide. Ellen's therapist prescribed 2 anti-anxiety medications, which she took regularly. The psychologist confirmed that the medications would not affect Ellen's mental state or lead to thoughts of death. Despite her anxiety, Ellen never voiced such thoughts. Additionally, Ellen's friends and colleagues noticed that after she and Samuel began living together, her behavior began to change. Along with becoming anxious and restless, Ellen's parents also noticed similar strange behavior. 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, give up everything, and move back in with her parents. Her mother was surprised by this and assured Ellen that she could come home at any time. After the couple moved in together, Samuel began to act violently toward Ellen, leaving her fearful and reluctant to speak up. Ellen's psychologist noted that Ellen had difficulty expressing her feelings and experiences. It seemed as though she wanted to reveal something important, but fear held her back. The lack of care in the examination of the crime scene and body, as well as the subsequent investigation, was astonishing. Many important details, events, and evidence were overlooked or lost, making it impossible to reconstruct the full details of the incident. Initially, there were no defensive wounds on Ellen's hands. Many bruises were found on her body, and the degree of healing suggested that they had occurred several weeks ago. Samuel claimed that these injuries could have been caused by playing sports. However, Ellen's parents said that their daughter had not been to the gym or the playground for quite some time. Soon after the investigation began, the possibility of suicide was raised. Ellen had approximately 20 penetrating wounds of varying depths, and forensic analysis showed that 10 of these wounds were from the back. If Ellen had been attacked from behind and suffered serious injuries, even if they did not kill Ellen immediately, they would have likely limited her ability to move and resist. It is highly unlikely that someone would inflict such wounds on themselves and then stab themselves deep into the heart, leading medical experts to question the cause of death. The investigation still did not result in criminal charges. As there was no trace of a stranger in the apartment, nor any sign of self-defense. Although the victim's wife or partner is often the prime suspect in these cases, Samuel was never a suspect. No charges were ever brought against Samuel, and he was only questioned at the police station on the day of the incident, along with his uncle, a prominent lawyer. The events of that day were reconstructed entirely from Samuel's account, which was sometimes unclear. But he attributed his confusion to stress. Neighbors reported only that they heard knocking and screaming from Samuel when he could not get into the apartment and was trying to call Ellen. Samuel claimed that he asked a security guard for help, that the security guard accompanied him down the stairs, and that the security guard witnessed Samuel kicking down a door. However, the security guard denied this claim, claiming that he never left his post. Regardless, the police did not look into the matter further, considering it irrelevant. Only a surveillance camera leading to the gym was examined, which showed Samuel walking toward the gym and then returning. Samuel may have escaped by another route and then returned to the gym the same way. However, his alibi was not investigated, and witnesses who confirmed that Samuel was working out were not sought. The police officer who responded to the call noticed that Samuel was acting unusually, even though he was screaming and crying loudly. The expert suspected that he was faking his panic and anxiety. Importantly, before calling the police, Samuel contacted his parents and his uncle, a lawyer. His uncle arrived at the apartment before the police arrived to give a statement. Samuel went to the police station with his uncle. Furthermore, the next day, Samuel returned to the sealed apartment with his uncle to retrieve some personal belongings. Samuel took 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet from Ellen. A few days later, the police decided to examine the devices and discovered that their search history included topics related to suicide. When the police arrived at the scene, they conducted only a preliminary examination and concluded that Ellen had committed suicide. Despite new information that later emerged, the police refused to change their verdict. The sequence of the injuries remains unclear, but it has been confirmed that the final wound was to the heart. The medical examiner found this odd and decided to investigate further. They sent a sample of Ellen's spine to a specialist who could assess the condition of the spinal cord. If the spinal cord was damaged, it would indicate that Ellen was paralyzed and could not have stabbed herself in the heart. Soon after, the police suddenly changed their minds and stopped the investigation, stating that, according to the report, there was no spinal cord injury. However, this conclusion was not added to the case file. It was also not noted that although there were many serious injuries on Ellen's body, there was very little blood, suggesting that someone might have wiped it away. No one actively looked for any signs of blood that had been wiped away. Additionally, the apartment's trash bins had not been checked, meaning any potential evidence inside was lost forever. Samuel's family, who were the first to arrive on the scene, notified Ellen's parents of their daughter's death. Ellen's family, who lived several hundred miles away, quickly arrived on the scene. Ellen's parents received no clear explanation of what happened that night involving Ellen. They were given only vague conclusions and were told that no criminal investigation would be initiated. Ellen's parents then chose to conduct an investigation, bringing in independent experts. Shortly thereafter, a private investigator contacted them and offered to assist them for free, as he wanted to shed light on this puzzling case. The detective examined the evidence and concluded that Ellen's body had been moved after her death. He also discovered smears on the floor that looked like drag marks. Additionally, when reviewing the case, the security guard recalled that Samuel, who had asked for help, was wearing a tracksuit and said he had just come from the gym, when in fact he was wearing boots. Despite this new evidence and witness testimony, Ellen's parents were once again denied a criminal case and no further investigation was conducted. Ellen's parents were not allowed access to important case files. 4 years later, a young police officer joined the unit as an assistant prosecutor. After learning about this unusual unsolved case while in college, he decided to look into the archives to uncover the truth. His attention was drawn to the wound at the back of the head, which might have been the first sign that Ellen had been attacked from behind when she was not expecting it. He was concerned to note that there was no spinal cord injury, but there was no official document to prove it. He assumed it was lost somewhere in the archives. He later formally requested a copy of the document from the Forensic Center, and it turned out that no one had ever come to such a conclusion and the body had not been examined for spinal cord injury. A fragment of the spine was surprisingly preserved and could be re-examined. An independent specialist assessed it and found that the spinal cord had sustained damage in multiple areas, indicating that Ellen could not have caused any additional injuries to herself. The findings were submitted to the police, but after reviewing them again, they decided not to pursue criminal charges. In 2018, the medical examiner concluded that Ellen had inflicted all 20 of her injuries on herself. The investigation reached a dead end. In their grief, the parents hired a new lawyer and together they gathered all the previously undocumented documents, evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a new lawsuit against the medical examiner and the police. The following spring, the case was accepted and settled, but the trial never took place due to the global pandemic. Due to negligence by the police and medical examiners, important evidence was lost forever. Ellen's parents created a social media page to track the progress of the investigation, sharing official documents, new information, and updates. Ellen's family, friends, and colleagues are convinced that she could not have killed herself, especially not in such a brutal way. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again, and Ellen's parents successfully appealed to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took over. The investigation was restarted 11 years after the tragic events, but to this day it remains unsolved. During the first year after the tragedy, Samuel tried to keep in touch with Ellen's family. However, he did not participate in their investigation and refused to communicate with the police. He seemed to have no interest in the case, as Samuel accepted Ellen's death as a suicide. Samuel got married a year later. He and his wife moved to another state and cut ties with Ellen's family. They are now raising 2 children together. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Neil Entwistle. Neil Entwistle was born on September 18, 1978, in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, England, to Clifford and Yvonne Entwistle. He grew up in a humble home with his younger brother, Russell. His father worked as a coal miner before becoming a labor counselor, while his mother worked as a cook in a school cafeteria. After finishing high school, Neil Entwistle enrolled in the University of York, where he studied electronic engineering and business management. During this time, Entwistle met an American student named Rachel Souza who was attending York as a study abroad student. Rachel was originally from the Kingston area in Massachusetts, had attended Silver Lake Region High School before going to Holy Cross College in Worcester. While studying abroad in York for a year, she met Neil Entwistle on the rowing team. Neil Entwistle was withdrawn, shy, and indecisive, rarely interacting with others. Rachel, on the other hand, exuded confidence, was cheerful, outgoing, and well-liked. Her American roots brought an undeniable charm to her personality, and Rachel was well received by the other members of the rowing team. Over time, Neil Entwistle and Rachel found themselves drawn to each other, eventually spending more and more time together. Benjamin Pryor, a close friend of Neil Entwistle and Rachel's since college, said the couple were very understanding, affectionate and caring towards each other. While Neil Entwistle worked at a defense and security technology company based in Malvern, Worcestershire, Rachel pursued a career in education after completing her studies in 2002. Rachel took up a teaching role in English, drama and theater studies at St. Augustine's Catholic High School in Redditch, nurturing young minds through the arts. In a post on Friends Reunited in June 2003, Neil Entwistle happily shared about his upcoming marriage to Rachel. They met through rowing, although he expressed dissatisfaction with life south of the border in Birmingham. He was happy with his upcoming marriage. In August 2003, Neil Entwistle and Rachel got married in 2 ceremonies, one in Plymouth, UK, and the other in Massachusetts, USA. After the US ceremony, they had a reception in the UK in November of the same year. Neil Entwistle shared the early days of their married life on a family website, including their Christmas 2004 trip to the Mediterranean. In April 2005, their daughter, Lillian Rose, was born. Neil Entwistle and Rachel decided to move to the United States. They initially lived with Rachel's mother and stepfather in Carver, Massachusetts, until they purchased their own home in Hopkinton on January 12, 2006. Their new home was located on a quiet cul-de-sac with only 8 neighbors, creating a peaceful setting close to a major city. Despite Neil Entwistle's efforts to find work as a computer programmer and IT specialist, he encountered difficulties in finding work, leading to financial stress and mounting debt. To ease the financial burden, Neil Entwistle turned to selling PC parts on eBay. However, his business was affected by customer complaints about undelivered orders, forcing eBay to investigate fraud. An investigation into Neil Entwistle's eBay activities uncovered that he was using multiple accounts under different names. Further investigation revealed that Neil Entwistle was involved in running a website called millimaker.co.uk. This website promoted a get-rich-quick scheme that promised to help people in the adult entertainment industry make a guaranteed $6,000 per month within 6 months. The website also claimed to offer 24/7 assistance. However, these claims ultimately led to the website being shut down. Neil Entwistle used online platforms to find sexual partners. He visited several websites to pursue relationships looking for sexual partners. On Adult Friend Finder, Neil Entwistle created a profile and emailed several women expressing his interest in meeting sexual partners. An investigation found incriminating evidence on Neil Entwistle's laptop. In his profile, Neil Entwistle stated that he was interested in meeting American women of different ages. Neil Entwistle also mentioned that he wanted to confirm whether American women were better in bed than women from other countries. Neil Entwistle's profile indicated that he was looking for a specific type of casual relationship and was open to meeting people with similar interests. Testimony at the trial revealed Neil Entwistle had continued his interest in escort services up to January 18, 2006. Online searches he conducted on Google included Blonde Bay Escort Service, Sex Escort Services Westboro, and Escort in Worcester. In their defense, Neil Entwistle's lawyers claimed that his wife, Rachel, was dissatisfied with their sex life. However, when reviewing Neil Entwistle's internet search history, it is revealed that Neil Entwistle had much darker motives than seeking out prostitutes and seeking relationships with other women. During this time, Neil Entwistle visited his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo, in Carver, Massachusetts. Joe Matarazzo, a member of the Old Colony Sporting Club, had previously taught Neil Entwistle how to shoot. Neil Entwistle also had a .22 caliber revolver with Joe Matarazzo's family. However, on this occasion, Neil Entwistle planned to steal a gun from Joe Matarazzo's family. Neil Entwistle went to his in-laws' home, found a hidden gun, and took it back to his house in Hopkinton. Once home, he secretly hid the firearm, waiting for the right moment to carry out a violent act against his family. On January 20, 2006, Neil Entwistle entered the master bedroom of his home, where his wife, Rachel, and their 9-month-old daughter, Lillian, were sleeping in their new bed. Neil Entwistle shot Rachel in the head and then shot Lillian, who was lying next to her. The bullet passed through Lillian's body and also hit Rachel in the left chest. Later that day, Neil Entwistle returned to Carver with the uncleaned weapon. He would later claim that he had gone shopping at Staples on that Friday and discovered his family dead when he got home. After leaving Carver, Neil Entwistle drove to Boston's Logan Airport on the evening of January 20, 2006. At the airport, he made 2 successful ATM withdrawals totaling $800, but 3 additional attempts to withdraw $420 were declined. The next day, January 21, 2006, Neil Entwistle bought a one-way ticket to London without checking any luggage. He boarded a British Airways flight that departed Boston at 8:15 p.m. that evening. Unbeknownst to Neil Entwistle, several neighbors he had invited for dinner, including Joanna Gatley and her sister Maureen, arrived at his home around 7 p.m. to find it locked with the lights on inside. Concerned for Rachel's safety, neighbors attempted to contact her mother, but were unable to reach her. They then called 911 at around 8:30. Police arrived at Neil Entwistle's home to search for clues about the missing family. Upon entering, Sergeant Michael Sutton observed the bedroom, noticing a large unmade bed, but nothing unusual. After completing their search, the police locked the house and left. However, Joanna Gatley and Maureen were still worried and decided to spend the night in the car outside the house, hoping that Rachel's family would return. To cope with the cold weather, they made several trips to the gas station restroom. The following Sunday morning, Joanna Gatley and Maureen gained entry to the house using the garage door code they had obtained from a next-door neighbor the night before. Inside, Joanna Gatley and Maureen discovered dishes and leftover food in the kitchen, indicating that the family had just finished eating. The bathtub was still full of water, indicating that the couple had bathed their infant daughter. They proceeded to the master bedroom, then to Lillian's bathroom, where classical music was playing, and finally checked the living room. Rachel's mother and stepfather then arrived at Rachel's house, and together they searched around the house. After assessing the situation, they decided to report the family missing to the Hopkinton Police Department. The police arrived at Rachel's house. Sergeant Sutton entered the basement and detected a foul odor. He followed the stench into the house to the master bedroom, where he found the bodies of Rachel and her infant child, Lillian. The mother's body was lying on a bed, covered in clothes. Rachel had her arms spread across Lillian's chest, both of them wearing pajamas. Autopsy results showed that Rachel died from a gunshot wound to the head, while Lillian was shot in the torso. DNA evidence was also found on the barrel of the gun and on the butt of the gun, belonging to Neil Entwistle. About 36 hours after returning to England, Neil Entwistle visited his parents, Cliff and Yvonne. He told them that he had been driving around and had spent the previous night in a hotel. During this visit, Neil Entwistle revealed to his parents that he had discovered the bodies of his wife and daughter. On January 23, 2006, Neil Entwistle had a 2-hour telephone conversation with Hopkinton Police, which was recorded. On January 26, 2006, U.S. law enforcement officials traveled to the UK to interview Neil Entwistle. The next day, after consulting with a lawyer at the U.S. Embassy in London, Neil Entwistle chose not to cooperate with the American detectives. Meanwhile, Rachel and her daughter Lillian were buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Kingston, Massachusetts, under the surname Souza, sharing a single grave, with around 500 people attending the funeral to pay their respects. However, Neil Entwistle was absent from the ceremony, and Neil Entwistle's name was not mentioned in the proceedings or inscribed on the headstone. Despite this, Neil Entwistle sent a bouquet of flowers, consisting of an orange rose and a white lily, with a note that read, "My orange roses and lilies forever," signed Sakoko. After returning to the UK, Neil Entwistle resumed his normal life in February 2006. However, the media continued to gather outside his parents' home in Worksop. Neil Entwistle went to Notting Hill for dinner with his old crew from York University, followed by a trip to the cinema. Just a week after the funeral, on February 8, 2006, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Neil Entwistle. The following day, February 9, 2006, Neil Entwistle was arrested by police at Royal Oak Station as he was about to board a train. Neil Entwistle was returned to the United States on February 15 and appeared in court, where he was denied bail and held at the Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. On March 28, 2006, Neil Entwistle was formally charged with murder and illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Neil Entwistle pleaded not guilty despite the charges against him. Almost a year after the incident, in December 2006, authorities at Middlesex County Jail found letters Neil Entwistle had written to his parents and lawyers. These letters showed that Neil Entwistle was depressed and might be thinking about killing himself. As a result, he was moved to Bridgewater Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation before being sent back to Middlesex County. Forensic psychiatrist Christopher Cordes believed that Neil Entwistle's behavior was caused by Asperger's syndrome, a view that was shared by Dr. David Holmes. After several delays, the process of choosing jurors for Neil Entwistle's trial at Middlesex Superior Court began in June 2008. The trial for the double murder of Neil Entwistle's wife and daughter began on June 2, 2008, in Massachusetts. Elliot Weinstein led the defense team for Neil Entwistle. During the trial, Elliot attempted to object to the prosecution's plan to introduce DNA evidence, but was unsuccessful. Elliot also attempted to suppress other evidence found in the family home, arguing that it was taken without a warrant, but this effort was also unsuccessful. Neil Entwistle chose not to call any witnesses or testify during the trial. Notably, Neil Entwistle showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. On June 25, 2008, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Neil Entwistle of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. As a result, Neil Entwistle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the severe sentence, Neil Entwistle appeared calm as he left the courtroom. Neil Entwistle was incarcerated at the Souza Baranowski Correctional Center. In August 2008, he became the victim of a hoax when he shaved his head to seek protection from a white supremacist prison gang. However, instead of receiving protection, the gang threatened Neil Entwistle's life. After this incident, Neil Entwistle was placed in protective custody. He was then transferred to the Old Colony Correctional Center, a prison located in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, in December. The tragic death of Rachel and her infant daughter has left a lasting legacy of grief for the family and those who loved them. In the face of this tragic loss, the community has come together to support and comfort the grieving family. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Grace Millane. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on December 2, 1996 in Wickford, Essex, to her parents Gillian and David Millane. She was the youngest of her 3 siblings. She was known as a lovely, outgoing, cheerful daughter who thought about her family and loved creativity and art. Because her family was so close to her, Grace maintained daily contact with her siblings and parents, even when she rented a house near her school, Lincoln University, where she studied advertising and marketing. In 2018, Grace Millane, 21, graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. Like most young people at that age, Grace decided that she would take a year off before settling into her career. She decided to travel to South America before going to New Zealand. She embarked on a 10-month solo adventure in October 2018. She initially visited Peru before making her way to South America. On November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, ready for a 2-week holiday traveling around the Upper North Island. It was in New Zealand that Grace met her Tinder match, a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, on December 1st. Jesse Kempson was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, but he grew up in Wellington. His parents separated when he was young, and for a time, he was raised by his grandparents. He moved to Australia with his mother as a teenager, but in 2016 he returned to New Zealand and lived in a hostel in Wellington. Grace didn't know that Jesse had a darker side, a more cruel soul, in him. Jesse was known to be a very charming guy, and he used that to manipulate people. On one occasion, Jesse lied to his former landlord that he was a professional softball player, newly signed by the New Zealand national softball team, the Black Sox, and claimed that his contract money would come so he could pay the rent. That went on for 2 months. And the homeowner only learned the truth when Black Sox management announced that no one knew who Jesse was. Unfortunately, the homeowner later discovered that he had fled elsewhere without his knowledge. He also sometimes claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, came from a millionaire family looking to buy a top restaurant in Auckland, had connections to the New Zealand Immigration Service, and many other lies that he mentioned to everyone. In reality, Jesse was nothing more than a dreamer who could only impress people with wild lies. His former roommates in a Green Lane boarding house found Jesse disturbing and untrustworthy before he moved into the City Life apartment. On another occasion, a woman he lived with claimed he stole money from her house and ran away again, costing the City Life homeowner thousands of dollars. Jesse was an enigma to many. He lied throughout his life, and it seemed to work. He also seemed to get away with it time and time again. Back at the dorm where Grace was staying, she was chatting happily with Jesse. Grace had no doubts and was captivated by Jesse. Grace even sent a text message to her best friend Anna back home, telling Anna that she agreed to Jesse's confession. Since it was Saturday and her 22nd birthday was the next day, Grace didn't want to be alone and decided to go out. She decided it was time to meet Jesse. Jesse lived just 5 minutes away from where Grace lived, and Grace thought they needed to get to know each other a little better. On that special day, Grace got ready for her big evening and felt nothing but excitement and optimism. Grace left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. On the evening of December 1st, she wore a black dress and carried a small handbag. Little did she know that her night would take a devastating turn. Initially, the evening seemed to have gone well as she and Jesse visited the Blue Stone Room and left together around 9:30. However, when her 22nd birthday arrived the next day, Grace did not respond to birthday wishes from family and friends. This unusual silence caused anxiety and panic, especially among her family members. It was unusual for Grace not to keep in touch as she regularly updated her family about her trip and shared photos of her adventures. Therefore, Grace's parents contacted Auckland police and reported her missing on December 5th. Thanks to an extensive network of CCTV cameras across the city and reports from witnesses, police were able to quickly track Grace's movements on the night she disappeared. They also identified the man with her, Jesse Kempson, who became a key figure in the investigation. Jesse stopped at the Blue Stone Room, a local bar next to the City Life Hotel where he was staying, on the night he was supposed to meet Grace. About half an hour before the scheduled meeting, Jesse was seen drinking 4 bottles of beer, sitting alone in a bar. Meanwhile, Grace arrived early at the Sky Tower, the location they had agreed upon. This location was chosen because of its high visibility and beauty. Sky Tower is a famous landmark in New Zealand's largest city and can be easily recognized from afar. When Jesse arrived, the two quickly recognized each other and greeted each other warmly, with Jesse hugging her as she smiled and approached him. They then went to a restaurant and burger bar on the first floor of the adjacent Sky City complex. Their entire time together at Sky City was captured on camera, showing Jesse and Grace chatting while riding the escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar. When they arrived, they ordered cocktails from the bartender and sat at the table to talk. They left the bar after an hour and a half and walked to a nearby Mexican restaurant. Over a period of time, they consumed a large number of drinks, including 2 pitchers of margaritas and a pitcher of sangria. They then moved to the Blue Stone Room, where Jesse had previously been drinking alone. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse gently kissed Grace. This marked the beginning of several shared kisses that took place over the next hour. During this time, there were brief interruptions, once when Jesse walked away for a moment. And another time when Grace checked her phone, as well as when she sent her last text to her friend, Anna. Jesse eventually walked away, took out his phone, and left a message on Grace's Facebook profile, saying she looked beautiful and radiant. Unbeknownst to him, this seemingly harmless act eventually turned the detectives towards him. Around 9:30 p.m., Jesse and Grace left the venue, walked toward the City Life Hotel lobby, and took the elevator to room 308. What happened while Jesse and Grace were in the hotel room is unknown. What is confirmed is that Jesse killed her. At 1:30 a.m., Grace's body was brought into room 308. Following the discovery, police determined that Grace had never left the building and that Jesse had chosen not to seek emergency assistance following the death of Grace. After Grace's death, Jesse conducted numerous internet searches using his cell phone. His online searches included searching for the terms hottest fire and Waitakere Range. Waitakere was the area where Jesse later tried to bury Grace's body in a shallow grave. Jesse also browsed a website to find video content. In addition to these actions, Jesse also took 7 intimate and explicit photos of Grace's body after her death. These photos included close-ups and posed shots that he arranged to take. The next morning, while Grace's body was still in room 308, Jesse sent a message to a woman he met on Tinder to go on a date the same day. Jesse's actions continued and he was recorded on CCTV as he went to an entertainment store to buy a suitcase and a supermarket to buy cleaning supplies. After these purchases, he rented a red Toyota hatchback and went out in the afternoon to meet the woman from Tinder at a bar in Ponsonby called RRY, while Grace's body remained in his room. On December 2nd, Jesse returned to his hotel room around 5:45 p.m. and rented a carpet cleaning machine, saying he needed it to remove a red wine stain. Then, he parked the rental car outside the hotel, took the luggage cart from the front desk, and went upstairs. He returned with the cart, which then contained 2 large suitcases. He loaded his luggage into the car and moved it to a nearby parking lot. Unbeknownst to the others, one of the suitcases, a silver one, contained Grace's body, while the other suitcase was used as bait to avoid arousing suspicion. Throughout the day, security cameras recorded Jesse changing clothes multiple times. Early the next morning, around 6:15 a.m., Jesse was seen leaving the hotel and driving away, stopping briefly to buy a shovel at a store outside of town. On December 7, 2018, Grace's father, David Millane, traveled to New Zealand to make a sincere appeal for information about his daughter's disappearance. A detective identified Jesse as a person of interest after Grace's mother noticed he had sent her a Facebook message at 9:29 p.m. on December 1, just 11 minutes before Jesse and Grace left Blue Stone Room and went to his room. During Detective Diana Levinson's initial questioning, Jesse claimed that he met Grace but broke up with her at 10 p.m. on Saturday, and that was the last time he saw her. However, detectives obtained CCTV footage from the hotel, which proved Jesse was lying. At the second interview, Jesse was forced to admit to killing Grace, but he claimed it was a sexual accident after she asked him to strangle her in an attempt to make the experience more pleasurable. After the interview, he was arrested and led police to the location of Grace's body. The body was discovered about 4 p.m. on December 9 in Waitakere Ranges Regional Park, off Scenic Drive. An autopsy was conducted on December 10. An autopsy showed Grace had been strangled and bruises on her body showed she had been restrained. Jesse's trial began in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Jesse claimed Grace's death was an accident caused by rough sex gone wrong, but the jury rejected this explanation and found him guilty. Jesse Kempson had been convicted of murder on November 22, 2019, at the age of 28. During his trial, it had become clear that he had a history of making women feel extremely uncomfortable, especially those he had met or communicated with on Tinder. 8 months before meeting his victim, Jesse had dated another British tourist on Tinder and had taken her back to his motel room in Oakland. When she had refused to have sex with him, he had assaulted her while she had been crying and frozen in bed with fear. The female tourist had kept the incident a secret until she had recognized Jesse in the media after he had been charged with murder. Jesse's online interactions with another woman had also raised concerns. He had shared explicit messages where he had detailed his sexual preferences and had explained why he had them. It was believed that his desire to control and dominate might have contributed to Grace's death. In a separate trial, Jesse had been convicted of assaulting his ex-girlfriend. He had assaulted her, had threatened her with a butcher knife, and had forced her to perform humiliating acts. Jesse had claimed that he had been sent by the CIA to kill her, displaying a disturbing pattern of behavior. Throughout the trial, Jesse had shown no remorse for his actions and had refused to accept responsibility. On February 21, 2020, Jesse had received a sentence of life in prison with a minimum of 17 years without parole. The tragic events surrounding Grace's story had highlighted the need for increased safety measures for travelers, especially young women hoping to explore the world.